And again, everyone, that's just a little bit of a selection called The Visionary from Lennon Honor. That's from his Soul Vision CD. For those of you that may or may not be acquainted with ESPIRITE-Radio 7, if you've missed any portion of the show or you want to do a recap after the show, you will find the archive located on ESPIRITE-Radio 7, period, blogspot.com. Blogspot.com. Again, that's ESPIRITE-Radio 7, period, blogspot.com. And when you go on there, you'll see a player on there. It's the Talk Shoe player. And when you do the drop-down box, you can select which show and archive you want to listen to. So the title for this show, once you select it for James, all you'll have to do is click on that and you'll be able to listen to the show. Additionally, on the blog, you will see links for Essential Spirit Enterprises, which is what E-Spirit E stands for. And you'll see additional links there, one of which is iTunes. iTunes will also provide a copy of the show. So for today's show or any of the archives for the show. So again, that's ESPIRITE-Radio 7, period, blogspot.com. Now, again, as we open up the show, we're going to start things off. James is going to kick the conversation off. I highly advise you to jot down notes because when I open up the Q&A, And when it starts getting kind of full, if you already have your thoughts formulated, we can get to as many callers as we possibly can this evening. And now I'd like to go ahead and introduce James Bomar III. And again, he's the founder of, again, everyone is also familiar as Sevan. James is the founder of Astral Quest, and he also is going to be bringing up secret energy as well, so he'll talk more about that. But I'd like to kick things off by asking James, what was the catalyst that has taken you through the current journey to where you are now? Welcome to the show, James.
Wholeness and Nesheba, thanks for having me on the show. Wow.
You're welcome.
It's obviously going to be one of those synchronistic nights. It was really good to come into the show, especially listen to the brother Lennon, doing his thing. And
yes.
Wow, I mean, tonight, I really want to establish more than anything the feeling of totality, because, this is something that, as I keep explaining show after show, we're going into, we're experiencing, and it's a real thing. It goes beyond just this conversation and this verbal stuff that comes over these computers. It comes deeply into the individual at a time where they do have solutions, as the title or quasi-title of tonight's show is the solutions, but within, if you're willing. So what we're talking about tonight is we're talking about the person, we're talking about self, because in the mind of someone who seeks totality, there is no one else. If you think about it, like sometimes we can go headlong into externalizing how we're going to assist everything. But if you understand totality and you understand totality, you know that you're connected with everything right now. It's not something to establish, it's something to accept. So in this tonight, we're going to get familiar with that feeling of totality, and also how to move out of what is just as simple as duality. So I would just like to say wholeness and balance to everyone, and it's a pleasure to be on the show.
I appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. Really, I do. I know you're busy.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, honestly, everyone knows if someone asks me to do a show, I'm on the show. That's what we agree to do. I don't care who it is. You can have one listener. It could just, the one listener could be just me and you. I mean, we had an excellent conversation before we got on the show just the other day. But, so I would definitely say, just to answer the question you presented in the beginning, what was the catalyst? And I've definitely gone through these stages of catalysts in my spiritual progression. I like to call it now the unoccultation, because the occultation means to hide something and to keep something a secret. The unoccultation should be the opposite of that. So that means total realization of who you are. And so I would say for me that, I just had so many personally different things that have happened in my life from stage to stage that have pushed me into waking up more. I would say for me, it was really experiencing prison. I mean, some people would say, well, what? Oh my goodness, prison. But, it's not something that I'm hiding. But realistically, what happened to me was I had reached, I was in this roller coaster in life, getting everything and then losing it all, getting everything and losing it all. And I was actually going through one of the losing it all experiences. And I noticed that, first of all, there was a sequence of things that would happen. I would first get this voice in my head that would be so sorry about what it's done and wonder how it could have been led to that certain point. Oh, how did we do this? I can't believe we said this was never supposed to happen. And then I call this the accuser, because this is obviously this voice is present at some times, but when you're having fun and you're going wild, it's not as present. But when you get slowed down and then something happens to you, then all of a sudden you get this accusing thing that starts to judge you and tell you that you did this wrong, you did that wrong. And so it was through that experience that I actually came into searching for myself what was going to happen when I died, because that was something that I had been pursuing since I was younger and still didn't get any answers on. But I felt like personally being away from everyone and being away from everything was worse than death, because, it was being prolonged. And, I'll just, be very clear tonight, just so people understand my path, is that I was at a point where life for me wasn't that entertaining, but I wasn't going to kill myself. And this was because I felt like a giant. Like I had all sorts of things in one moment and then nothing in the next moment. And it's easy to fall down a couple steps on the ladder, but when you fall off like the top of the ladder, it hurts a lot more. And so I was going through these strolls personally in my own mind about getting questions answered that I had since I was younger, because I studied spirituality very heavily, as people could see in my bio, and I won't get into tonight. But when I was younger, I did walk through many spiritual systems, and I was raised in just a different kind of household because my mom was in the movement and she knew all about this stuff that was going on with the food and the water and the propaganda and the curriculum. And because of all that, she was serious about not just being from Detroit, not raising us into this foolishness, basically. So I still dived headlong in it when I reached my teens, like we all do, and it was in somewhat like a slingshot effect, which happens. But it also gave me a really good foundation that later on, when I was going to need that foundation, that I would be able to rely on it. So in that situation, I actually discovered that I was going to need to harness some spiritual power for myself, because I was in a supernatural war. And what I mean by that is that what you're dealing with, why do you think these people are wearing badges that are certain stars or pentagrams or septagrams? Why do you think, there's courthouses, which is basically a vessel docked on land that is doing binding, doing legal proceedings, etc., with basically free people that have until they can get bound under that system. And of course, this is a long study. It gets into sovereignty. It gets into freemen and the straw men and these different kind of levels of figuring out what the government has done with our status and our status of sovereignty. So anyway, so I went beyond that. I realized that I was under some kind of dominion, in a sense, from much more higher powers. But of course, I didn't realize that till later on. Like initially, it started within Gnosticism. I didn't really travel the religious path directly, but for a minute. But I started in Christianity since I was younger, as most people. But I had a really good background also in Islam, because my mother had actually been in Wahhab Islam after Malcolm X had split from the nation. And then what happened to him, she ended up turning into more of a Muslim from the East, praying 5 times a day and just following that path. Because people have to understand that it was very hard on sisters to deal with those organizations also, because it was very predatory. You have very dominant men and different things going on within the Nation of Islam during those times. So, people need to recollect that, understand that kind of history, what exactly was going on in those nucleuses. So I'm, in a sense, a product of that nucleus, but one that has emancipated himself or self-substantiated himself beyond many of the shells that you can get trapped in as you're just getting too deep into the story, to the point where the story starts to latch a hold of you. And what I mean by that is, like, your past can be so enigmatic, especially when you look deeper into it. You start getting into the ancestors, you start getting into the stories. I'm not saying deny your roots and your foundation, but you also have to understand what this world is at a certain point, and then what is beyond this world, which we'll, of course, get into tonight. So to sum up the question, I was put into a process where I was looking at facing the legal system in a sense, and I wasn't going to accept what they were trying to give me as a conviction. And at that point, I realized, as I had hired this attorney that cost all this money and wouldn't even call me back, and all this stuff going on as I tried to use money to fight the whole situation, I realized that there was way too many other synchronistic things, because I was always a stickler for detail. I did have the spiritual side, but I switched over to my logic side, and I always was noting synchronicities. And just the whole synchronicities around the situation, there were so many different things that really said that this is where I was supposed to be. Not so much as that this was a punishment. And so what happened was I kind of changed my mind around and said, okay, if I'm going to do some time, which is like a year and a half, I said, I'm going to use that as my university. I'm going to use that as the time that I was actually supposed to spend a lot more time in college. And so I went into this self-education. I actually read all the way up through F all the way to F in the encyclopedia at a certain point, just waiting for more books. But my primary interest was spiritual books and spirituality. So I went through everything and even had a lot of different things come synchronistically, like York's work. And York had actually went away during the same time that I was facing my legal issues. And I actually knew members of that family and didn't even know who he was, just for those who knew Malachi York. But basically what I was seeing is I was seeing that I was always in the orbit of this energy that is to assist the people as much as possible. But the first thing that needed to be understood was that it's either the man or the mission. And I told people this in the beginning, like, don't get fascinated and captivated by the man. It's about the mission. The mission is total. We all go into totality, total realization of self, and that all is self. And that's what's driving me. That's what's powering me, because I've been through situations where they say, oh, no, you're done. Like, we're going to throw the key away on you. And that come back as, we don't know what happened. The paperwork is gone. What's the state recommending? Well, let's see what the lawyer's recommending. And just things happening that were really your higher self, and I would say that, or my higher self moving on my behalf, because I had begun to make a connection with that higher self again, with self again, by tuning out a lot of what the external world had going on. Because even when you're in there, it just only intensifies, and you're also dealing with people in the outside world, it's all still the same thing. Everyone has an issue in a situation, and they want to report it to you so that they can see, they can see if you can rectify it somehow. So this is what our world generally is like every single day. When we go out, when we deal with anyone, they need assistance. So this is, in a sense, pulling from you. It's just a straight up thing. So if you're somewhat of a beacon in the world, and many people have this mantle, they don't have to be quote unquote good or quote unquote bad. They have the mantle of having to take care of large amounts of people and then dealing with lots of problems. So we just want to come to a better formula at where we're getting the synergy, which is the term we should be using, to deal with these kind of issues. So for me, the catalyst was, hey, you either accept what they're going to tell you or you're doomed, but there is one thing that you may be able to do. I think that this kind of situation would take the power of the supreme being. So maybe you should find the supreme being. And because I had so much spiritual knowledge already resting inside me, I made contact. And it went through stages. And I saw many things, but I was always quiet. Like, this spiritual thing was so internal to me, and I felt like to even tell anyone about it may mess it up for a while. And I just also was very different while I was inside, because in every bit of inside, and it was just because you couldn't come to me talking about foolishness. That was the only thing that was different about me, is that if you came to talk to me, you knew we were going to have some kind of deep conversation, or don't come and talk to me. And that did excellent for filtering out foolishness, because instead what I got was individuals coming to me, first of all, just from a heart level, like just knowing I'm not a game. Hey, can you help me read this? I can't read. Or, hey, I'm struggling with this. What do you think? And so I watched thousands of people, thousands of characters, because I've always been a people watcher anyway. So, I saw the essence of what we really are in that place. And I also realized how this religion that I was progressing through, and even the Gnosticism that I was progressing through, had many bonds on it itself. And even though I was waxing strong, meaning I was lucid dreaming, dealing with Gnosticism, meaning that lucid dreaming is you basically go to sleep. It tends to not happen every single night, but you see something that seems to awaken you, and then all of a sudden you can move around in the dream. And then from the moment you can do that, you generally leave the vista that you're in, like wherever the dream starts, you fly away from there, because that's always known to be the illusion. And then you go to these places basically that you want to go. And so I figured out very early that when I said certain things and when I desired to do certain things, I could do it, and I could also fly, meaning I have one more spatial. And this worked wonders for my spiritual progress, because I was able to see what all the entities really were by just calling their name. And that's when I figured out, there's a hierarchy. There's a spiritual power, as most people know in religion, as they actually confess, is generally thought by them to come from another source. But in fact, it's coming from them. And so that becomes the thin line between religion and what one could call Gnosticism, or one could call going into the totality. And it's just that one doesn't accept any external entities as being different than them. And this is where sovereignty comes in, because the moment that you accept the king, you're no longer a sovereign. Like, it's called the king of the kings. Once you accept anything of dominion over you, now you're actually saying that is greater than you. But remember what we said in the beginning of this conversation. In the mind and in the consciousness of one who seeks totality, there is nobody else. So there's no one greater. We're all together. And so you see how if you're living in a world where the framework of the firmware of the reality teaches people with the consciousness of their higher being, higher power, whatever, that it's external, from that point it's gonna replicate upon itself, like what we see in pi. It's going to replicate on itself, even distortions. It's going to replicate all sorts of phantoms and monsters until someone comes in and actually balances it. And again, to not make this conversation external, because some people are like, well, how are we going to balance the external world? Whoa. All this conversation is just about the internal world. Someone's got to move inside of there and start doing the work that is necessary. And guess what? This what you're doing the work on, it's not built by man's hands. Like meaning two fingers, two thumbs, and whatever. So what happens is that you can't necessarily use tools that are built by man's hands to fix a temple that's never been built by man's hands. You have to use another kind of power, another kind of source. And this is where we get into this working with ether. This is when we get into working with full spectrum light, which is 9 colors. This is where we get into basically the deprogramming of what it takes to really feel awake, really understand what awake is. Because what happens is that we deem that sleep is sleep and tired is tired, and then awake, and that's awake, especially when I'm not sleepy. But there are higher degrees than that, meaning that you can be so awake and so present, you can see all of this other stuff that's actually going on in the framework of the reality when you center yourself. Or you could be so distracted that someone can be talking to you and you can't even hear what they're really saying. So but all those, you haven't even fell asleep yet. So what I'm wanting to put forth here is that, remember, if you think that you're actually awake, because you always can be doing some work and you never want to accept that something's going on that's not, you can actually get to a higher level of the awakening that you're in always, and to a point where you see this field. Looks like it's 528 hertz on the cymatic pattern. Cymatics is basically when you play sound and sound makes a shape. They have Duality plates and different devices to show you the shape behind sound. So there's this harmonic called 528 hertz that shoots out this pattern. And this pattern has been seen throughout all ancient traditions, throughout anybody who has ever been somebody that knew something, drew this pattern of what's called concave triangles, interlacing upon and intermeshing with one another. It's like what you see in the center of a sunflower. And so this is what we're talking about, of step-by-step awakening. So there's no use in saying, okay, well, yeah, I'm awake, if you haven't actually seen the HUD. You can work towards that. But if you think for some reason that you don't need it, let's talk about that just a little bit. And we're going to take questions a little bit later. But let's talk about just a person say, well, I don't know if I really need those kind of things to go into the stage that I'm really looking to go into. Okay. First of all, what eyes are you looking through? Especially when you're attempting to determine that. And generally, most people are looking through 2 eyes. So right away from 2 eyes, that's duality. It's as simple as that. But even deeper than that, notice how, I'm just going to show you how hard-coded it is that you see two different ways. If you close one eye, right, and then look at something, and then open the other eye and close the other eye, you'll notice that it'll shift. So this is a very simple way, again, to see that you do have two different perspectives, even on the hard-coded level of seeing things. But here's what's even more interesting. If you notice, you're actually most of the time looking out of one eye, not really the other. You're seeing out of both of them, but you're using one primarily, just like you're using your right hand primarily. So any person just dealing with basics will say, well, okay, something's out of balance then. So let me explain to you where this out of balance comes from. The Earth is at this 23.5 degree tilt. And that tilt actually gives us the 4 seasons. Without that tilt, it would all be one season. And that says a lot. But even deeper than that, because the body is a microcosmic version of the Earth, that the heart is actually tilted from the side of the center of the chest at 23.5 degrees also. Showing you that it's even in our hearts. Not only literally, but directly. It's in our hearts. It's our hearts that's off balance. And that once we line up our hearts, meaning really becoming true, heart is the anagram for the word earth, obviously. So once we become true, then we'll line up. But until then, we'll see primarily out of one eye, meaning either you're more polarized to the left or polarized to the right. And then that will be generally the dominant frequency that you emit that allows you to progress into what's called duality. Until you can actually balance both hemispheres, you cannot leave duality. It's not even possible. So this is also, because this is way later on I started discovering this, but this set fields ahead of a great deal of the progress. And it was because you started realizing very, very deeply that, first of all, this judges itself. There's no cheating this. You won't be able to let somebody else do it for you. Any kind of ideas that someone else is going to do it for you is all false. That's just for the slacker. So what happens is that this whole thing starts to come alive. Our experience where we are now, we start to see that even the things that they're putting in the movies right now are things that we can actually do. They're playing in the movies with it. We can actually do this. And not only, I'm not saying we can do this from well, maybe if we get together and maybe if we get the right tools and maybe if we get the right experiment and the formula. No, I'm saying we did it. I'm literally, and I always have to do this at least every show. This is something that we've already figured out the secret to and how it works. Now it's intricate because it involves the body. The body, if you don't even have to pay attention to nobody else, the body requires so much of your attention at this point. It's amazing. It's like in itself a baby that needed to be taken care of that we just forgot about a long time ago. But because of its strength, because of its DNA itself, walking from amoeba all the way to what it is now, it still has a consciousness in itself, and it believes that this world and this existence is the only thing that really exists. And so it'll hold on to that. So again, to bring this full circle, we have to understand that this war, if there's anyone to blame, if there's anyone to judge, I'm telling you, you're not going to have enough time to accuse enough external people. You're going to have to get into yourself, start your own court, bring the ethics in, get some of the lower parts of the body out of the higher areas of consciousness, get the balance going on, get the harmonics going on, figure out what you really need, and then get ready to come online. Because notice how this technology, the best stuff that they can actually bring out, still has nothing on a human body. It's not even close. Not even an insect. We can put an insect and it still doesn't have anything on it because it's just such a big gap. But in many cases, we need to take that also to empower us. Remember, the same thing that can empower you can also become your trap. So that's what's going on with the bodies. But this body, when activated, if you really understand what you're dealing with, it's cold fusion. That's how you can blow cold air out your mouth, hot air out your mouth. You got an energetic field all around the body. They call it the aura, of course, but it's even deeper than that. It's an electromagnetic field that matches with the Earth's electromagnetic field. It's just as simple as the Chinese documents of the acupuncture on the meridians on the body. Those are the same acupunctural meridians found on the planet. So what I'm saying is that it's not as mystical as going big time into some cave and temple somewhere to try to find it. It's really right outside your door if you're trying to look outside. But more importantly, it's right there. You're inside of it. You would have never left yourself alone. Because I had to think about this, like in existence anyway, if you even thought as an advanced being, which you were, that you would get off track, you would leave yourself a map. And you will put the map in a place that you couldn't lose it. Because after all, if you get off track, you generally lose everything you have. So how can it be somewhere that you can never lose it? It's the body that you're in. Every single body that you inhabit is the map to the immediate universe and also the way out. And so there's lots of conversation that we've done in the past about this, and I will get into stuff directly because, those conversations could expand themselves. But it just gives some of the new callers a range of where we can really go with this. And also we could talk about topics that are not as lofty. It's just, getting to, like I said tonight, the solutions so that people get familiar with the energy of totality.
Exactly, and you kind of also zipped over to a little touch of sacred geometry in there as well. So there's definitely a lot of places to go, and then where you just went to is our connection, the connectivity to Gaia and to the universe, and how points within us are the same in both places.
For sure. I mean, the conclusion of the geometry, see, the sacred geometry or the Platonic solids are very similar to blocks that you give to 2-year-olds, especially when you're looking at cymatics. It's like a very rudimentary way of trying to understand how we really are. So much to a degree that, I have my own suspicions that the Pythagorean knowledge was more to create artificial grids, which also became known as pi. And these artificial grids, they're like reflections of the original. So if they jump up and they claim that they're the original, then people who don't know edgewise can say, oh, yeah, that's original because it's like a replica. You see what I mean? So in every sense, the reflection of the sun then is what I'm saying. If the sun's energy is used and then harnessed and then re-reflected, if you knew what you're doing, which is basically to place an obelisk in the right place, you can beam an entirely different reality, which is basically hacking the original reality. And this is really what obelisks and glyphs are really all about. It's you basically refract light. And there's more than one planet that you can really refract light from anyway. You can do it with any star in the sky. You can magnify a star in the sky. So what you're really dealing with then is what I'm explaining to you is that this planet, first of all, Earth, it contains every single component that there ever is out in the devacanic planes or the dualistic planes. It's, as they say, as above, so below. There's a correspondence here, even if it's deep in the ocean, you haven't seen it yet. So the reality is that how this works is that there are separate wavelengths or bands in this reality. And the different entities that exist here, which is basically you on different levels, all exist within these bands, but they never come in contact with each other. And how they never come in contact with each other is that there is this harmonic. And this is where a lot of what you would call if there was any evil things to worry about, as people were writing about these evil things, this is what they were talking about. They were talking about these divisive forces or forces of division The symbol was then also a pyramid, because when you shine a light into a pyramid, a clear light, it comes out as 9 colors, being black and white being colors that you may ignore or may miss. And so what happens is that from this point, now let's say, for instance, you're purple and you carry your life on that way. There's a diametrically opposed color to you. And you don't really like what that color does and what that color is about. If you and that color ever happen to blend, you two would create another color. And then that color would actually be a mixture of you two. And it will go on living in a blend of you two, but you two may always be separate and polarized. So what I'm talking about is when you look at the color spectrum, you're seeing all the variations of frequencies. They can get a TV up to billions of colors. The variations of frequencies, different personalities that each individual has, but yet they haven't tapped into that they're actually everything. To a point where if you start insisting to them that they are everything, they get afraid, they deny it, and it gets hostile. And that's just in reference. That's just trying to tell them. When you show them, then the fear, which is the mind controller, it amplifies. And this is why. Trust gains arousal. Distrust gains fear. Okay? So if a person doesn't trust you, then it's because they're afraid of something happening to them. Now, if it wasn't so many experiences that people have had in their lives where they've trusted someone and then none of this would even be occurring in that person's consciousness. But because they've run into several of the scenarios, because the world is hostile, especially for little children, they gain a level of distrust. In fact, to distrust anyone, especially with what they deem as very important. So for a seeker, there's nothing more important than their soul. So to trust what another person's saying about your soul and to go further in spiritual practices with that individual is very rare, especially these days, because it takes a lot of trust. And that's why back in the old days, and we'll reflect for just a minute, you had people you can trust because everyone was like family. See, before it got to 8 billion, when it was still at 100,000, people were so close together to see another man and a woman was like, you were going to do a George Jefferson walk, because it wasn't that many of us then. And, humanity has a very enigmatic story. Like, this story will keep running. And that's why I encourage people to, start figuring out what's going on outside of time, because Earth, like an action-reaction kind of drama. So it knows how to, like, even when this planet got to a point where it really was about to be destroyed, according to what people thought, a person's consciousness can rise up so strong with a group of people that whatever was going on would just stop fast. Mm-hmm. In fact, the only real reason why the planet is allowed to carry on as it is right now is because of all the segregation. Because of all those boundaries and all those divisions and all those buffer fields that keep one frequency from another, that's enabling everyone to see where their real connection is. So then what would you need in that kind of situation if you're just looking at it from the sky? You need something that can knock down walls. You need also bridges. You need glue. You need skeleton. So there's many metaphors that we can refer to, especially if you understand alchemy, to how you would really go about restoring this grid that's broken. And let me explain to you how this grid works. So the human bodies, which are based on phi, there's a difference between pi and phi, but we won't get into that tonight. But human body, which is based on phi, that's how waves move. That's how conch shells move on the back. There's a spiral, okay? So the phi-based structure, excuse me, I hold on real quick for me. I do apologize. Mm-hmm. I just have one thing that I need to, before I get into the phi. Actually, why don't we do this? Is there some questions that we can take just a minute? Sure. And I didn't have my notes on that here, and I said before that yesterday that I was going to begin to go based on the notes on these bodies, but I'll let you go ahead and take some calls, and we'll get back to that in just a minute.
Sure. everyone throughout the show, as a notice, jot down any comments or questions that you have. That way, when you come into the Q&A queue, and we can get through as many callers as possible. Star 6 to come into the Q&A queue. And like I said, it kind of is a little bit easy if you have your thoughts formulated as to what question or comment that you might have. So again, star 6, and that will bring you into the Q&A queue.
I did want to say something.
Sure.
So what happened was is that when I have like 3 thoughts at one time, it does kind of fry the vocal frame, because there was 3 things that I need to explain at the same time about the 5 base bodies, and it was like, okay, don't forget to say this. And there was like 3 things, and I was like, oh. Okay, so just so we get over this really briefly, and then we'll go ahead and take some calls. That the 5 base bodies have the composites of every single animal and insect that is on the planet. The spider part of individuals is what they call the silver line, okay? And the silver line is what comes from the back of the individual. It's like an umbilical cord. It actually could be in different places, by the way, and sometimes there's several lines, but let's just hone in on one known as the silver line. And then what it does is it connects to a specific part of the body, okay? And then what that does is it connects the person to the hive, okay? Because what phi is, and that's why it's also symbolically related to the pentagram, especially when it's corrupted. It's more of, it has curved lines, like the precession of Venus in the sky, like what you see on a sand dollar. It has a curve. This kind of body is a hive-based body, okay? And what it means to be on a hive is that we basically 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, so that connects us in a certain way. So what happens is we're moving around, we're weaving webs. This is other people interacting with other people. Even a person's frequency can interact with another person without the other person even saying anything. You ever been in a room and somebody's just depressed and you don't have to say anything, but you can feel the depression, right? So what happens is that there's many frequencies interacting on top of other frequencies, and this creates what looks like a web. And this web has geometric patterns to it. And the more larger webs, from what I began to see, some of the larger webs wrapped around the field are artificial. Somebody is casting webs, casting nets, okay? And I think that gets into Wicca, and that gets into weaving webs like Bohemian Grove and all this, which is basically to use the Hartman grid, which is the organic grid that moves through the planet, which is the connection to the hive, to send energetic principles down them, affecting the people that are actually on those grids and lines. And this is called the craft. This is the work that's done in the streets of Washington, the work that's done in pretty much every country that one who's worked for Pharaoh, which is a Freemason, has been able to do the work. So in every city, country that there's current moving through, currency, money, talismans, basically, there will always be work, especially downtown. And downtown is what's called the center of the vortex. It's where all the energy is being pulled in. Generally, it comes from the Hindu term city, which means a power. So in the city, downtown is the power of the vortex. Generally, what you see there, and this is replete, you can go on Google Earth and just watch it if you understand how to measure it out, is obelisks. And these obelisks, this knowledge was taken from Kemet because, according to the Kemetan tradition, the tetragrammaton was animate on the dimension and under the name Cain. And the being would inscribe on these obelisks these symbols. And then it would command the ones who were commissioned under it, which is basically a Freemason, to go and take these to other lands. And it would put those people on that land under the dominion of that wavelength, that web. So again, this is web weaving. Okay, so we could talk about how to really untether. I think I had this word today, but one would still need to realize that I wouldn't recommend that, because that connection with the planet, unless you're a master adept, your own thing, do what you do, but that connection that you have with your planet is also the roots. It's like your mother's umbilical cord. So before you untether, you will really need to know what you are doing with going through planes. And this is, to make this very clear, that this is not all offline. This is some wild stuff. See, the Tibetans, as we were talking about on the other show, so what the Tibetans do is that they have a bell and they have a dorje rod. And when they ring that bell, like, these people spend their lives meditating. Do you think that they're not tapped into something? If you spend a few minutes meditating, you can see there's potential. If you learn how to breathe, you can see that there's even more potential. It's like getting high off air, or i.e. bliss. And then if you understand how to use that energy to send back through your body to awake the rest of the body, and then you see that there's even greater potential, because you actually can leave the body like that. You ease out of the body because you've gone into a higher vibratory frequency. So even though someone maybe at the mall hasn't been able to accomplish that, these people over on the other side of the world, that's all they really have and that's all they really want. They've accomplished that, but they also know what they're doing. You can't, there's more to it. You know how most religions just stop with getting to heaven. This stuff talks about what you need to be doing when you finally get there, because you're going. Everyone's going. Everyone will be leaving here and going to some heaven or haven. So it seemed to me also when I was younger, we should probably put $1 billion into that. That's what my biggest pity was when I was a kid, and I'd just be all strung out there and upset. And then if somebody ever asked me what was going on, I'd be like, man, we just put a stealth bomber up. Because I grew up on a military base, and the ticket on the stealth bomber was crazy. But why wouldn't we put that money into figuring out what happens when we die? After all, who cares about a stealth bomber if we can't figure out what happens when we die? Because that means none of this stuff will be important. So I think this is from past lives of getting to the point of finally realizing the only real thing that needs to happen first when you come into time is figure out how to get out of time. Because there's a certain phenomena that you watch occur with a lot of people, everyone. And that's the older you get, the less will you really have to keep pushing through this. Now, I'm not saying that there's not some older folks that's really kicking and moving. I'm just saying on a general perspective, when you get older, you run out of a lot of this energy that is your will and your passions and your desire to do something new. You get rigid, is what I'm saying. And then what happens is that on the auric field, I'll tell you what it looks like. The person has developed around their body this gray field. And then they look like a knight. And so every time someone's up laughing, jumping, clapping, and wants them to dance, they're like, I don't dance. Get away from me. When it's time to shout and to go into joy, they're like, that's, I don't do shout and joy. That's not. And you can watch these Saturnalians. Because that's what that means. Gray is the color of Saturn. Lead is the element of Saturn. It means the one who's least affected by light. So when you're younger, of course, all the lights are affecting you. And that's what they call blinded by the light. So we need to get to this balanced spectrum where, one, we don't become the Saturnalian that's not willing to trust anymore. So you can't make the leap of faith over death and into the next stage of your consciousness and catch yourself. So this is where we're at now. And it's like, how many times is this message going to come across? Because it's always going to be the same message. Get out of duality. Now, if you want the story of duality, oh man, once upon a time, 10 years ago, we're storytelling people. So, you could get some drums to that. We can get some fire. We can bring in all the elements, and we can tell the story we could spend 5 or 10 hours on just Rama. We can go then on to Apollonius, and then we can get into Apollo a little bit if we want to be fanciful, and then we could break it back all the way down to Enki if we want to, really get in there. And then how about Zervan? What was he up to? And you see, so we have so many different beings in our pantheism. And if we took it ever externally, oh my goodness, don't do that. Because what the pantheism one is every position of the sun as it moves throughout the vault of the sky and through the underworld. This means that this is every single frequency in 360 degrees, even the dark ones, for those who only like the light. And that's what this whole world consists of from the sun, or the soul, which is who? The soul is us, because the soul is one. So the soul says, well, I don't, it doesn't matter if you guys thought you were separate. Obviously, the son's not saying anything, but just the dialogue. It doesn't matter if you guys are all think you're separate. It doesn't matter. There's no such thing as separation, sillies. And until you figure that out, which is going to be quite difficult, it seems, then you cannot you can't come up through the straight and narrow way. You can't come through the straight path. Until then, you'll have to go through the back door, and you'll have to zigzag up the tree, meaning to go through the tantra, which is arousal and sexual pleasure, or through the yoga, which is the pain of the bending and the contorting of the body, until you can get the kundalini, which is your energy system, balanced so that it can come up to the straight path and go right into into totality. And so, I thought that was, I think it was stomachable. I mean, like I would say to people all the time, that there was a beginning to this. And so if it's not making sense at all, it may behoove you to go and check out some of that stuff, because we all started at a certain point with this. And this is things that we've studied together, we've experienced together, and we've come to find it to be very true. But that also is amongst a collective of individuals who have gone beyond, have looked to see if they can use their spiritual factors. Do we really have a third eye? Can we really control our dreams? Are there really elements in nature that can turn on the energetic principle of the body? Can you really restructure water? Can you rebuild water? Can you wipe the memory panels from water? So asking those questions, going deep into fringe to get the answers, because of something that drives us, a will that drives us to say that I'm a sovereign. I'm not going to get trapped here. I don't care what the story is. I don't care who's on top, who's on the bottom. To me, we're all the same because I'm a sovereign. And then moving into that next frequency. And of course, doing that with arousal and enjoyment rather than through fear, which won't get so far. It won't get far.
That's Power Pack. So I'm hoping everybody's taking it in. We have a couple callers. I'm going to go ahead and take the callers. Again, everyone, you can star 6 in to come into the Q&A queue. And as we're going through the call today, if you have comments or questions, sometimes a thought comes to our mind. If we don't jot it down real quick, we'll forget. So in order for us to get through as many callers this evening, kind of jot little notes down. That way when you come into the queue, we can get through. I'm going to welcome in caller 813. Caller 813, welcome to the call.
Hi.
Hi.
Wholeness.
Oh, my God. I'm so glad I finally got to talk to a big, big help in my life. Sevan, I love you.
I love you, too.
I just want to start out by saying on this journey, it has been like I'm from the hood, and I awoke in the hood. And I'm just, so happy to actually be at this point where I'm conscious, to actually see things moving around in my life with a thought. And it's funny, because who would have knew?
For sure. I mean, I know exactly where you're coming from. I mean, it's just, in every state of consciousness will have somewhat of that same degree, no matter where they are. They can be over in Monaco. It's even worse. But it's just the density can get so thick, and one can really believe that what's going on in their lives and who they really are in that particular existence is the only thing. It can kind of shroud things for a while, and then when we get out of it, oh my goodness. And then there's now degrees of that, of course, and that's what I love the most, is every time we come into some new knowledge, it's like an energetic principle for us.
Sevan, my question to you is, so in this whole matrix thing, is most of our dreams is like we make them up ourselves? So when I dream at night, some of my dreams are more like I've had verses in the Bible came to me, and I've also had the dream of I could fly. But you said in the last thing you just did with Boundless that you will be in a dream where that you would be seeing that you could fly, but no one around you will be able to acknowledge it till y'all start to talk about it in the dream. And I had a friend that was inside my dream, and I was calling her while I was flying in the air, and she couldn't hear me. It was like she was sending these bubbles back, and I started floating. At first it scared me, and then I released my fears in my dream, and I was doing flips and stuff, but she couldn't hear me in my dream until I came back down on the ground. And then I had like another dream of me folding up matter, I think it was, in midair, and it was making me move around while I was floating doing that. And I was wondering, is that a part of when you're starting to, your centers are starting to wake up in you?
Most certainly. Obviously, a beautiful explanation of the process in itself, and it has, it's deeper metaphors in what you're also seeing. I think that's also, of course, what the extreme right brain consciousness of the dream world has such a dynamic way of trying to explain things, but it's almost like trying to explain it in sign language or trying to use a language that it doesn't actually understand at times, which is how the left brain interprets things. And in a certain sense, her not being able to really hear you until you got back on the ground is sometimes coming at her level of where she's at, which is on the ground in a certain sense compared to where you are with your consciousness currently. But to build the bridge, you need to land the ship and pick the person up in a certain sense or find what can be bridged to them. But it's very interesting that the exploration in the dream world, because what I was explaining earlier about the buffer in between, and I just saw Interstellar yesterday, and there was actually a great part in the end of the movie where it explains this, or where it's showing this, but it's all very clear. See, the next dimension, which they say is accessed through a tesseract. And if you understand what a tesseract is, and you could go into Wikipedia, but it's basically a hypercube. When you unfold it, it looks like a cross made out of boxes. Okay, and what this is basically a symbol that symbolizes to something that can turn things inside out. Okay, so they're saying if you turn this dimension inside out, there's another side to this. And in the other side, there's no such thing as what we call time. And in that space, there's a buffer between you and this physical world. And so you can at times be attempting to communicate with someone, and you may even be in their house. I mean, it could get that precise. But they can't actually even feel that you're there because there's this huge buffer. And those buffers exist with the same thing that separates frequencies, it separates colors, etc. Okay? And so some have the ability to utilize their other body that's on that spectrum, or to actually basically merge themselves. So you could see it's basically a way to get through the wall. And that's why they say there's certain portals in different places that you could go into your dream world and then go through somewhere that comes right out into this plane directly, versus trying to pierce what was known as the ice walls, which are basically huge buffers between spectrums, so that way timelines don't rub against each other. And this is, so if anyone thinks that there's some malevolence involved and there's some other entities doing this and all that, I'll tell you that this is something that we can do easily. It's not hard for us to develop shells around ourselves and go deeper and deeper into our consciousness, create smaller worlds and nucleuses that we stay in, like our house, while still staying in a much more larger nucleus called Earth, like more of a collective projection that we all share, and then have this other great beyond of where obviously the mothers, the fathers, and those kind of people go when they leave, also going on. So you see, we have all these different dynamics, even within a mind that doesn't understand English, may seem to everyone else to be very ignorant. It doesn't matter. The same mechanics it's not a language. It's embedded within the person's system of their DNA, is the mechanics that's capable of creating all this stuff. The dog dreams. So the reality is that the dream, it offers ability to use another body to do something with. But if you just let it go, it's quite creative, meaning that it will display and show many things, many of which have no bearing to be true in this world in the way that you're seeing it. You see what I mean?
So that's why I was flying?
No, I'm not saying that in the way that you're seeing it, that maybe you will be the first person to fly physically on the physical plane. But, that would be quite a phenomenon for everyone to behold. But at the same time,
here comes Kiss.
Exactly. I have this dream. But just surely as your acceleration of your frequency in any kind of reality that you're in shines like a beacon. So what it really does is it smears off a lot of the more denser objects that are looking to get that light. And the main way we need to understand is to not, because we could go into fear very easy, but to see it as if they're seeds, but they don't have any sunlight, then they won't grow. So if someone shines a beacon, now the first person, this is the thing, the person who can really shine the beacon is not worried about if others can put the beacon out. If you're worried about if others can put the beacon out, you can't maintain the beacon anyway. You got to go back to one-on-one again and get it all together about how to basically instill within yourself. You seal, in a sense, your own chakras for a while. This means all the things that are pulling and pushing and pulling from you, you start to regulate those more until you realize how much power can be built up when you're not excelling the power all the time. But this is also why the body is developed doing both of those. It breathes in, it absorbs all the energy, all the essence, and then it breathes out. It expels all the creation and all of the energy from within. So those two forces, if you stop one of them up, if you're facing an imbalance, you could stop one of them up and then go into and accelerate your frequencies. Now, remember, we're talking about the literal and the word-based version of this activation. There are generally, and that's why we deal with the body a lot, there are things that, like the pH of the body, the hydrogen in the blood, which we just recently figured out, and we got something amazing for that, it's not expensive at all. You need a small amount, and it changes the ORP and everything of what you're eating. I'm gonna send an email out tomorrow. I had to wait to announce it because I need to make sure that we actually are secured with this. And I just got the email back today that we are secured with it. I have to do a video because this is something that needs to be seen visually for people. I think it would even be doing it injustice not to show it that way because I have the testers and things here. But it's the furthest I've ever went in my work. I've been studying water for 6 years almost now. And finally to get to the point to be able to break down the surface tension of water, to be able to decrease its oxidation value, and then also to be able to balance out its pH with a small dose of just a certain element. And so I'm not saying all of this to build suspense on it, but if you have your email tied into the website, you'll get the email. The email go okay. So the email go out within 2 to 3 days. And what I'm saying is that all of this seems to me, because remember, I'm watching everything. It all seems to be so synchronistic, though, because we could have got this company was about 12 years ago. It's all over the place. All the time I see something that's there, like Max Heindel's work. And what I'm saying is it's there. Even currently, yeah, of course, the synchronicities. But I'm talking about old stuff that was written. People already knew, and it's just like, and then now it's just time for us to find out. This is what I started really gaining from all this more than anything, is that it's not so much as, something's been holding us down and we could have gotten this a long time ago, and all of that's all fear-based. I don't even want to hear any of that anymore. All I want to hear is it's time, and we're about to do it now. That's all. Like any other story for me would be dramatic and would be degrading in a certain sense to where we're at now. So, I would say, though, is that's what the Achilles heel was. And it's interesting how it's set up, though, is because what we do to our bodies, we pay for that. And it's strange because in our world, we're not even taught to pay attention to that. We're taught to pay attention to more of external things, about doing things to them rather than doing to ourselves. We break laws against our own body, okay? And then meaning to say that again?
I just barely stopped eating the meat, and I was having those dreams while I was eating the meat, and it just amazes me how flowing up on matter, like fleshy eating food, that you can start seeing physically more than you can mentally think of the stuff that that's wrong with the world.
Yeah, I mean, because it's never considered, because what happens is that in many cases, and this is not, I always have a disclaimer with this because people now they get crazy about the meat and they don't like hearing certain statements. So this is not just telling everyone that you should go and get off meat, because it takes a while to really wean your body off of it. But the reality is that it's common sense when there's elements, as they put it in the ancient tradition, it's all a path to the same source. It's just some are a lot slower, meaning that all these elements have and contain energy, but some of the energies are very sluggish and very dense. And so if you put those energies in the body, and then you keep feeding the body that, then it can't really accelerate itself out of frequency. But the most important thing, though, because this is also another Achilles heel with the whole diets and trying to buy all this stuff from Whole Foods, and bills get up to $2,000-$3,000 a month, and it's just ridiculous. It's the water, and that's what I've really been working the most at. And it's good to be at this point because I really feel like people are going to benefit the most. I'm working on things that we could get and start getting care packages to people and getting real things going on, because the power is real. Like that, being able to project and being able to go into different planes and being able to lucid dream and even push into this plane. See, really what it works like in this plane more is that everything here is collective because it's a hive. So if you can, it's big ship, small rudder, though. If you can figure out a way to get a rudder in there, you can move the current into different directions. But the reality is that all the collective projections together are all bouncing off of each other. So there's generally an opposite feeling to how you feel. And then both of you cancel each other out. What could happen in the dimension is where everyone gets into more of handling their own space. So instead of being the frequency, like let's say, for instance, you're the pink of the earth, okay? And then all of what pink love and passion, and so you get to be pink this life, right? And then meanwhile, the earth's enjoying full spectrum, So what we're talking about is going into your life and then seeing, well, what other colors are you missing? Like today, I'll give you a great example. I started noticing, like, especially when I was younger, I worked out since I was 15, and I did a lot of upper body workout. We call that vanity working out, right? And there's a lot of upper body working out, no lower body working out. So now I can see that everything that I developed, all the companies that I developed and some of the things that I was involved in, how all that kind of feel. It was very strong in the upper body, especially in the brain. It was very developed. But the lower foundation end of it was almost non-existent. So for the last 3 years, I started working on the foundation of myself, working out on the legs, working out on the roots and getting in touch with the mother and these kind of things, okay? And then what I started witnessing is then the things that I created started having more of a foundation to it. I said, man, this is all a mirror. Once again, we'll see. So now let's take it to another level. So now we're up here, and the resistance in the Astro Quest is kind of like the chest or the arms. That's the resistance, the arms, or Mars, the warrior part of it. And then you got Astro Quest, which is obviously way out there. It's like you got to get on a rocket ship just to get up there, right? But what about the ground? Like, how are we getting in touch with the masses? So what I saw in the Metamorphosis and what we're instilling is that, see, the physical side, which is actually the regimen, the physical side of what I do every single day, everyone's about to see. We're going to turn the cameras on. And all the people that are also with me and that have linked with me in the past and that are all coming together in this nucleus, they're going to be able to witness that in real time and how we progress through this daily cycle. And then it's going to be more people. And that's what the platform is developed to do. It's developed to host something like that. But it's just a glue. The only thing that we're using Droid for, these machines, is just to keep the communication established until we can reorganize the organic grid, which is already up. It's just about teaching individuals how to actually tap into that side of themselves, how to interpret the synchronicities without going crazy. Remember, the biggest thing, if I could ever say I had a master, the biggest thing someone ever taught me is not to get crazy about this. It's just like Napoleon wrote in his book, superstition, too much women, too much alcohol, too much gambling is the end of anyone. And so he made sure he didn't get into any of that.
Right?
Of course. Well, so the measures of these kind of things, when one is it's basics though. It's not about church and what's good and bad, because at the end of the day, you still have to deal with each of your organisms and understand how to balance them out. There's always a way. It's just about not giving up on yourself. And I was saying that today because you have a lot of talented people moving through the industry, especially now, but the diversity of their background and where they've come from and what they've gone through just shows you how an individual can really power through basically the netherworld, where there's so many sun gods. There's so many. It's like our world's got two suns in it. There's two beings that want to be worshipped. So in that sense, that amount of energy that individual gets a chance to keep for themselves is like their food. So that's how we have to start seeing it now. If you give all your energy away and you're giving it all to these other different things that you're letting have dominion over you, when it's time for you to sit down and eat, how much is really left? And this is the key. Like if someone said, well, what is the key to all this? How did you actually make this happen? I came out of dominion. I didn't accept anymore any gods before me, even though I had seen the main one. Well, I was on my way to see that one and had seen quite a few other ones that work for it. Now, I'll say this, maybe this could be wholly developed by our own consciousness, but there's so many people that believe in that, it's become real, meaning that the pantheism in itself as external beings and angels and Enoch and Ezekiel and Yahweh and Allah and the companions and the Fatima and the gardens of delight and all that, there's so many people that believe in that projection, it became real. So this is the other thing. This is the next step. That's how you don't get stuck on the ladder. You got to realize that, don't think because you land in one of these blissful gardens that you've made it. Because you can do that in your lucid dreaming. You can bring up your own world. But now, just because people would think, if you figured out everything about this world and even, if, let's say, the next plane, you figured out everything about the next plane, then now you're going to find this happiness. Because this is where this whole New Age thing is taking everyone, that they understand everything about this new world and this spirituality and stuff, that they're going to find happiness. Wait a minute. Because that's the same thing that we thought here in this present physical world called Earth. That if we figured out everything here, like science has pretty much done or showed everyone, and the ancients obviously had done it a long time ago, they figured everything out, then that was going to be our happiness. No, it's not. So it's not going to happen in the next world. If you don't find happiness here inside within, the next world is it's only going to be a reflection of who you are, and it's going to power itself off of you, just like this world is doing. And then when you get ready to leave that status, when you get ready to stop being the grain, then it's a twinkling of an eye that it changes. When you really crack into it, it's a twinkling of an eye. We just got to now do all of this work. We got to figure out how to now get the front door reevaluated. We done threw this big party inside of our body and broke some chandeliers or some chakras. And now we have to figure out how to get parts for that, but I will say, because there's some that may think that's complex, that's what the bridge building, that's what the synchronicity is really about. Because someone has that for you. You have something that they need, and they have something that you need, and you exchange that. And you exchange it not in fear. You exchange it in arousal. That is the only way. And so that's what this whole thing is really about. And it's tough. It's going to be a tough road in the beginning. It's because there's been so much damage. Now that I've actually realized what we really needed personally, now I see how the whole society is developed truly away from people achieving that, because it's all fear-based. Everything around you is fear-based. So even the reason why the guy is working, the reason why certain people are doing it, all of it, all around them, few people are operating on the arousal. And then here's another level of the deception. It makes people believe that there's a lot of people operating on arousal or happy with their lives, right? Because then they have this TV, which they can project to all these other little devices. And then they only have a handful of people, mainly about 10,000 people, that are enjoying these lives that are strictly propped up like Pleasantville. Strictly propped up, and they just look like, when they flip on the cameras, that they're having the greatest life. But even the people who own the companies, the people who are main executive board holders of the companies, all these people are struggling. They are struggling. They have not achieved any level of balance. See, balance, this is what I was saying earlier. You can't trick it. So even if you think, because they do a good job at tricking everybody else, that's their job. So they show in the camera, when the camera turns on, happy, the wind's blowing in the air, happy, happy, happy. But see, that's a program. How are you going to be happy separate? That's a false happiness. If you accept that as real, we really got a problem. And so this is where we're at now. We have now to accept that.
I'd like to thank you for calling in. Caller 813. There's a couple other callers. Did you have any additional questions or comments?
Well, I just want to say thank you, and I'm going to keep continuing listening to Seven, and whenever I can on any other show, I will be calling in. I love you, Seven. Thank you
Okay,
again.
thanks a lot.
And if something else comes to mind, feel free to star six back in. I'm going to welcome in caller three
Thank you.
four seven 347. Welcome to the show.
Hi,
Hi.
Wholeness.
Wholeness.
How you doing?
How are
Excellent.
you doing?
I'm great, great. Sevan, it's a pleasure to finally get a chance to meet you. I'm an artist here living in New York, and a lot of my stuff has been like geared towards like I find it easy to be. I find my comfort in ancient Egyptian work, and I've been listening to a lot of your shows and radio shows and videos.
Hi,
For,
Sevan.
like, just like
I know you're still there.
Yeah,
hello.
I'm still
Oh
here.
yeah.
There you go.
I've been. Oh okay. I've been listening to a lot
Are
of
you
your shows.
on
just
mute,
like,
Sevan?
No, I've just got a crispy clear thing going on over here.
There you go.
oh, okay. Oh, all right. Can you hear me? Am I good?
Yeah,
Yes,
you're loud and clear.
You're good.
Oh, okay. Great. But I've been listening to a lot of your shows on YouTube. I just joined the Resistance website a few days ago, but I had a dream. I had a bunch of little stones and stuff around the house, beads and stuff that I was just had laying around. And as I was listening to your show, I started like picking them up and working on spirals. Like I work with like copper wire and silver wire and stuff like that. And I started making these copper swirls. I had started out doing that before when I first made jewelry a few years ago, but I left it alone and just started this. My birthday is October, so I went to Alabama and I started like finding a lot of my old stuff, which was better than the new stuff that I'm doing now. So I brought that back up with me, and I had a dream that it was raining, pouring over my workstation in my apartment, and it wasn't a rain that was like, I wasn't worried about the machines or anything. I work with stone, like I said, I work with metal, but there's like electrical stuff over there, but I wasn't really concerned about that. It was just like the rain was coming from out of the window, like out of the windowsill. But I see that there's a change happening in the way I want to present or express my creativity. I guess the question I want to ask is, how can I be more effective with my spiritual growth in my expression to put forth to people? Because I come across like a lot of times people are like, man, it's too expensive or it's too detailed, or they love it. Everybody loves my work. I love it too. It's just that I want to be able to be more spiritually, energetically expressive. Like I'm starting to work with like resins. I want to make organs, like orgonite. But I don't want to just make pyramids. I want to do like different type shapes, like half spheres, beetles. I still have that ancient Egyptian feel to my work, but I want to bring more to it. So I just want to know, like, how do you see artists with this mind state not crashing in with the competition, because they have the 3D printers and all that stuff now, and I come across that a lot. People ask me, do I use that? And I'm like, nah, I'm old fashioned, but even being old fashioned is kind of like stifling me in a way, because I'm like stuck in my own modality. I've created a certain mold and I won't come out of it, but I'm seeing that the mold is drying up and cracking now. So I guess I'm like, what would you suggest be a good avenue for me to go through? Because I'm looking more technological now. I want to add like LED lights, magnets, copper coils. I don't have an extensive knowledge of technology, but like if I know, like a good way to gear myself too, I can, be better proficient in my work.
Yeah, I would say, I would say that, I mean, we're always looking to enhance what we're doing, and some people also believe that if you're not like that, then you've obtained happiness. So, I kind of oscillate back and forth between the two, because I'm always looking to enhance what I'm doing. And what I've noticed is that when I start focusing on something specific, like what am I looking to do with my works. Like, what do my works do? How are they contributing to this individual as far as the energy that they're going to be exchanging with me through this medium? And so I look at it from that level, and I always add value. Personally, I always look to whatever I'm asking for, that I know that whatever it's really worth is way over that if I have to sustain myself off of things like that, you see? And so what I would suggest is that's the other thing about the new platform, is because just generally how it works on the ground floor of things is that if you don't really have some level of exposure, especially to a crowd that actually has that kind of currency to put into their into their desires, then you find yourself with a cold market. You post it on Facebook, then it circulates amongst your friends. Maybe a couple of them bought them, but then that's pretty much it, how you get outside that circle. A lot of this has a lot to do, especially when you get into these kind of industries, it's a lot to do with aesthetics. So if you don't have the graphic presentation, if you don't have the original work, if you don't know how to fit the modality and intents of what people are used to seeing visually, and this doesn't have to do with what you're showing, but it has to do with even colors, like what colors are up front, what colors are in the back. So I'll tell you this: do me a favor and just send me an email, sevan@cypherist.com. That's the number 7, CIPHERIST, or you know how to get in touch with me. It's like I at least have 5 outlets that you can reach me. And then let me see some of your stuff. And that's how it works. See, that's what the new platform is about. It's not about one person having to do everything. It's actually putting everyone in with the tools that they're going to need to connect with each other to get what they want to see out of this projection in conjunction with what others want, right? And so if someone can do it with cheeseburgers, then we should be able to do something with, heartfelt work that's energy based. But like I said, that's where your work comes in, though, too, is to get in with what's going on new with what's been discovered with energy. Also, what the potential of the orgone really is, especially with copper spirals. Also, the connection between the copper and a certain blood type versus silver in another blood type, because copper makes certain people sleepy. And then, but those same people, silver gets them really going, and it's because of their blood type. Why some people need gold, which is a little bit difficult to get a hold of these days. But then you can also go back just with your resin and use another form, like a liquid form of energetic potential. And I'm not going to blaze out the conversation tonight with this, but just understand that with resin, which you can find organic resin made from tree sap. Obviously, you've done your research. I think it's entropy resins, even though I'm still getting, I have a guy that you could talk to about this, but I'm having a little issue getting the stuff to cure like I want it. But then with 3D printings, which is something that you can send off somewhere. You don't always think about getting one of them at the house, because there's one over there now. It's just collecting dust. We did a bunch of stuff with it, and then it kind of fizzed out. And the last thing we wanted to do with it is just create molds for resins, because then you can get some kind of specific design going on. You can slide it into a mold, set your pieces, and then you can, voila, come out with something that has the energetic potential of being able to assist the person that you're actually dealing with. And remember, there's a lot of energy pendants and things that have been put together in research. I would, as my research, go and grab a good Google page of all of them and just sit back and really see what's going on. And then obviously you can ping questions off of me, and I can instruct you on certain things about how to understand how to put energy potential into other things. And then that way, a person is just feeling it. So it's not even like they have to make the decision about whether they want to give up this paper for something that actually has value. It's really more of you giving something from your heart and something that you've designed.
Yeah.
But
it's not. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying it's a tricky thing, though. Remember, there's a thin line with this, the whole currency thing, and we can at times get so caught up in it, we can not realize that we're sending off a certain kind of energy that also is kind of counterproductive to even being able to earn currency. So that's where your work comes in with your body and raising your fluids above the center pillar, or the center of the body, and raising them at least above the navel, which is important. So that's all I'll say on that.
All right. One more thing. I heard you say about lead doesn't absorb light, right?
It was the least affected by light. Everything really absorbs light, but
it's the least affected.
Yes, in other frequencies.
In other frequencies. What about pewter? Because I was looking into doing some cold casting in pewter. I don't want to work with nothing that's going to, like you said, I don't want to put a sluggish energy on nobody.
Well, hold on. Because what happens is that if it's a cast, everything starts from, see, there's no good and bad here. And this is where, our mind, it loves to do that. Okay. And that's why the corpus callosum is burned out. Everything has its purpose. So with those who hold at the foundation, they're strong. So they cast. You see, that's what really what they call spell casting, net casting. They cast, meaning they're holding a mold, but it's also everything's got to be made up of somebody, so somebody's got to be the mold. You get it? So it's like somebody says, okay, well, look, we're going to need someone to be the mold. Everyone's like, not me. Not me. Don't pick me because we're nowadays, because everyone's like, oh, no, I'm a cloud at least. But what really happened in the beginning was that's the foundation. Like, so you are always going to be able to be the elements that everything else was developed from. And that's metu nectar. That's what it talked about. That you would be the element. And so even now, look, you're crafting and you're using the elements from the earth to create things. So the elements of the earth live through what you created. And and you did the work.
Okay. I sent you a Facebook request. Okay. I sent you a message.
Well, yeah, that wouldn't be a good way. You got to hit me with the email address because I've now I've gone over the Facebook friend limit thing, and I just can't. Okay. It's just a long list in there now.
Let me. Could you repeat the email address one more time? Then I'm gonna get off and let you continue.
Sure. It's the number 7 at Cypherus. That's CIPHEH. That's a PH. Excuse me if you didn't hear me correctly. Yeah, PHERIST.
Cypherist. CIEPHERIST.
.com. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, brother. Wholeness and wellness to you and everyone, and
thank you.
Hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for calling. I'm going to welcome in caller 808. 808. Welcome to the call. Welcome, 808.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, aloha, actually, calling from Hawaii.
Nice.
I just wanted to, I'm listening, and my wife and I recently discovered Sevan and his sites and podcast a few months ago, and, we've always kind of been questioning. We've always questioned everything, and the synchronicities that have been happening are actually pretty crazy. And you just mentioned that movie Interstellar. And living in Hawaii, I see a lot of, the Chinese food dogs.
Yeah.
And the symbol, the flower of life symbol that's under the paw, I guess it's the male food dog. That's related to the I Ching, correct?
Actually, that's in every way, 64-bit I Ching is basically a 64-bit reality based on the yin and the yang, which is duality. And then it kind of splits up into trigrams, and then those are the ways and basically the drama in between. And then that sums up the dominion, which is where the paw is over it. And then what's back there is the food dog, which is in the Egyptian tradition, Anubis, because that would encapsulate the plane, earth being also in a sense, the dirt or the foundation. That's why there's so much character here of what greater planes are created on. It's greater in the sense of them being frequencies that are above this one. And that's what that would be symbolizing. It's obviously a very long tradition. So remember when I was explaining to you earlier how there's different grids around the world? So so if you look at the body, if it's phi, then we can say it's like a phi-based grid around the body. Then when we jump into just the triangles, which are basically the Sri Yantra, we actually get Saturn in a sense because of the hexagonal pole. So now there goes another one. So then if you just think about it, all of these other lights that are shining are actually shining out these frequencies or these webs. And so it's just about the distance of them. So this is why the moon, in a sense, which is known as the Lord, exercises the most dominion because it's like the last refractor of the light before it actually gets to you, right? And so these are the webs or the frequencies laid on top of one another. And then so when the food dog tradition was coming forth, in a sense, which is actually not called that, but when that tradition was coming forth, that was the grid that they were working with and still work with. And that's why outside of time, in all of these places, all these temples, they're running just like they were back when they were at their climax. Okay? And this is the climax is always the apex point or the balance point of any society, right? So when you sit in front of the temples, if you go into the balance or the apex point, you can see, because the frequency changes in your body, obviously, to do this, you can then see the place when it was bustling and when it was at its height. And then it's always been known that everything that's at its height is always in balance. So if you find your way to that place, then you will see the truth, because the truth is the balance. But if you go to that place, and let's say one's on another frequency, one of the crazy frequencies, and you go to that version of the place through especially your thoughts, this is generally the vehicle to travel, with that kind of frequency and that kind of consciousness, that's the time you're going to see it in. That's the frequency that you're going to see it in. And so hopefully that clarifies a little bit more about, because there's other images that do have different geometry and there's different entities holding different things in their hands. Like even the cone is another set of geometry, like during the Sumerians are holding, that would be similar to kind of like what the food dog is doing.
My wife, actually, she's a spiritual response therapist and does craniosacral therapy.
Oh, yeah.
And the spiritual response stuff, the images that she has in her books, the flower of life, things like that. I mean, it's it's not necessarily a question. It's just crazy how all these things have been kind of lining up for us ever since we kind of tuned in to what you've been putting out. And with that movie, too, it's crazy how they had the kind of tesseract at the end of it.
Yeah, that one, like I said, I just seen it last night, and, not going to get long-winded about it, just in justice of those who haven't, but it's kind of wild that they just would throw it in front of people's face like that. And I guess it's just maybe some people say it's because they totally think that people don't even know what's going on, but that's not really how it works. Like once you start playing with this stuff, it doesn't really go away. So there's another movie, Predestination. So why are all these movies coming out about moving through time? First of all, even when one of those movies are over, people are still disorientated kind of, and generally need to feel like they need to see it twice to even understand what's going on, just from going into the conscious and moving around time. And then also virtual reality is just dropping. And so there are some things that if one just thought, oh, there's always something going on, and they just ignored some of these things, then it would be something that, and what I'm saying is people would think that, oh, this is always happening. But there's certain things that just recently started happening that take the consciousness in itself into warp speed and quantumness. And then, because remember, it's all around you. It's on top of you, okay? You just can't see it. So that means that the more you start to be able to see, the more the frequencies start to change, the more you can see what's already there. So it's important to understand it that way, because it's not that you're actually attracting something and then now all of a sudden it's coming around. It's that you're actually opening up your real eyes to see what's always been there. Because then it gets so quantum where little small stuff just has such a significant meaning. It puts together the big parts of the puzzle for you. And so that's what I have to say about that, not to get overexcited about it.
Yeah, I grew up under a very strict Islamic dictatorship in Iran. And, these recent revelations that I've had with, learning about Saturn and the cube, and the feeling that I had, this heavy, heavy feeling that the religion gives off. I mean, it makes total sense with the comparison to lead. And then recently I saw the UN prayer room that they built in the 50s or 60s with the cube in the middle of the room. I'm sure you know about that, but
yeah, I mean, yeah,
it's
with
just
the,
crazy.
with the painting.
Yeah, the painting and the lead cube, I guess, that they have with the light shining on it. Yeah. But anyway, no more question. I'll get off. But it was a pleasure, and can't wait. Secret Energy, and we'll be tuned in for sure.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for calling. I'm going to welcome in caller 813. Caller 813, welcome to the call. 813? Are you possibly on mute, 813?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
If you're scrambling for the
Okay.
mute button, no.
I'm just talking, and you say, "Are you on mute?" Okay. Seven. I want to know, how did you get your name Seven?
It's my middle name with the S in front. It's actually Sevan, and it's just all strange because back a long time ago, I said instead of me being a name, I'm going to be a number, and then I said, it's going to be number 7, and so this was for like years before. People just used to call me Seven, and then when I was getting ready to publish the Code of the Matrix. Code of the Matrix is such a wild book. I was still a little paranoid, so I was like, do I really want to put this in my name? So I was like, what about Sevan? And then I was like, yeah, that'll work. And then I went ahead and put the book out. And then it was strange because then I said, wait a minute, Sevan is actually my middle name with the S in front. But this is just the whole thing.
Never
with this.
noticed that?
No, well, not
Wow.
until a certain point, but it was working
Right.
it was just going quantum for me. Like the guy said when he got off the phone, all of a sudden I realized that I was knee deep in it more so than outside of it and so far away from it.
Well, I think I was connected to you through the 7 because, like, as I was being awakened, I think I was always looking for pennies of some sort on the ground, and I would notice that I would always get home and it would be always the number 7 or 14 or 21 pennies. And I kept saying before I were introduced to you, I was on a journey of studying the Bible, and I had got real deep into it where I wouldn't go to church. I would only study at home. And I started studying, like on a channel they have on channel 31, it would be the Cabal. And I had got into that. And it was like I was actually on step like a ladder until like the last religion I could remember actually touching and talking and introducing myself around people was the Rastafarians.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like almost we were smoking marijuana every day doing service. And I'm like, this got to be the best religion ever, And it was like more than meets the eye, really, And then I started noticing that they were really like a cult almost because they didn't want you to have your throat chakra working that much. The women have to be quiet.
That's
almost.
a good way of putting it. That's a nice way of putting it. I feel you, though. I know exactly what you mean, 100%. And the interesting part is it's really the procession because there would be no 7 if there wasn't a 6, and there would be no 8 if there wasn't a 7. And it's really tarot. It's the wheel. And so each of these numbers do mean something. I tended to not associate it with much of this numbers anymore. I say they make you numb, but I do know what they mean. And the most real significant real-time meaning of the number 7 is the amount of orifices in your head, because that's your globe in a tense. And you have 2 eyes, 2 nostrils.
Is that a good thing to be? To have been, I guess, for me to acknowledge that I was really finding 7 pennies, and then you appeared.
Well, again, hopefully if you've been following the work long enough, you understand the concept there not being a good and a bad, because then it just distorts our perception of things. So you have to just ask yourself, well, where are you at now? How do you feel? And how does it feel to you? And how, if it's expanded you or if it's taken you back. And then from that point, then you can determine really my identity. But I do know my identity, of course, and that's the direction that I'm going is to keep expanding it into totality. I see everyone as really a part of myself and someone else that I have to link with to gain something from. Likewise, I have lots of things that they can gain from me. That way it can be symbiotic. And so that's how I come forward. But as far as the 7 thing, like I was saying, you get thrown these mantles on you. I mean, since you're born, your mother named you something. You didn't even, how much did you have really to do with that? Some people will say everything, but it's all collective. So the biorhythm will hold, like these ancient ancestors and whatever. They say, well, this is what the person is going to come out this life. Then that's the gauntlet that you need to run and the path that you need to go through to hopefully get to a point where you escape all of the, like I said, the numbers, the significations, the marks and things of that nature. I don't even say escape because that gets us into fear, but that you progress through it, that you actually see it all as having meaning and having worth, not choosing something in particular as better than one or over the other, till you can finally deprogram it. So remember, I'm working on this now too. You may see me the other day. I went headlong with the sword of duality on something because it was just getting on my nerves for a while because how foolishness it was. But you see, it's something you work out of your system about the whole, just seeing, is this a good thing for me or is this a bad thing for me? But don't confuse that with discernment. Meaning, don't confuse that with knowing how to use your instinct and your intuitions, the senses that you have, your connection with the earth. You know when something's on the core, something's going on. All those kind of things are still going to be intact anyway. Those are things that have been gained over thousands of years of, having to run from predators and things at times to be able to survive and to sustain. I just know now that we're getting close enough to where when we can see what's going on now, but then there's this leap. And that's the easiest way to explain it, because this is why, see, the fear, if I could put it all together for you to make it very clear, is only half of the body. It's like the lower area from the feet all the way to the middle of the body is the fear zone. And so as you can see, it can get a person all the way to the middle, but it can't get the person the rest of the way. And so that's really what we're dealing with now. Like, remember, all of the religions, especially the Islam and the Christianity, are fear-based. Nobody can ignore that. God is terrible in those traditions. So what happens is that because of just adapting that kind of principle, then the consciousness can only go to a certain point, the midpoint, where the Lord resides in the body, which is the Muladhara chakra. That's also the fecundating component of your body, basically your regenerative principle. So things, as far as your energy is concerned, for most human beings, tends to be summed up with just the energy of an orgasm, which is quite magnificent. So what happens is that if you can get beyond that, if you can learn how to use orgasmic energy, which is orgone, to raise yourself even beyond that point, then you overcome sin. And what this means is you've overcome the moon. The moon is Nanar sin, which is actually a male-female. So it means that you figured out how to get out of duality, because that's also the spite between man and woman, is the sexual component. So you get beyond the dualities, and then you actually get more into the androgynous side of self before self collapses into having no distinguishments. And the androgynous side, just to make it clear, and I'll be done, the androgynous side of self is basically being able to arouse yourself. And so a person who's very externalized has a hard time doing that. But that's really the mark that you're looking for, is that the point that you're looking for is to be able to actually be able to stir your own arousal with your mind, rather than using external components.
Wow. So I don't have any kids. I'm 35, and I think I just now found my twin flame. It was like with dealing with the colors and a significant name that I had started using, and then along came this guy who is another part of the other name that I use. So it was like I had thought up in time, I guess, this name that I was going to remember, and to me it seems like he's the one, and I wanted to start having kids, but I listened to you saying about the fire that has to be in you, and I see that I don't like to really have sex. It's like, I guess, I can't explain it, but I really don't. But with him, I visualize me doing it with him, and it's like better that way. I need a way to get aroused by him, I guess. So I think of myself doing it, and it works better. But I want to have kids, so I don't know how to perform in that way to get me a baby with less tries,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, because it's a lot of it's based on the wills of the individual, and we all have to. I like the term. There's no marriage in heaven. It's hilarious to me, but it basically means that still in the totality of things, that there's nothing that's separate. So everyone is together, and I think even the whole act of marriage sometimes can be to separate one or distinguish one as separate from the rest of the individuals, and so one just has to keep that in mind, and it tends to some of the programming or pre-programming that's been put into just the idealism around twin flames and significant others and these kind of things. Now, it's obviously excellent to be on the quest with someone that actually is about it like you're about it. I mean, we're all looking for that. And the closer that we can draw to that, we know the better off that we'll be. In regards to some of the more personal things, that in a sense takes personal consultations, because obviously there's in a certain tense ways to move through things. And then there's other things that are just set in stone because we all have our different preferences and things of that nature. So, again, it just gets into more of working integrally with yourself, understanding the breathing technique. Because remember, the energy that actually causes arousal is tied to the front channel of your body. So if you don't know how to basically jump yourself off with your breath, then that actual energy will, it just really, the whole act becomes more repulsive for you. Rather that you just stayed solo in a certain tense in those kind of areas. And that's that partiality of some of the feminine character. But again, all these things can be worked through because it's all glands. Like I love what my mom used to say, it's all chemical. But realistically, a lot of it is. There's different glands and things, especially in the female body, that when not cared for properly or put through different kind of cycles and different kind of medication, it does kind of change the mind about certain things. So just keep that in your glove case too. And obviously these kind of questions will be answered a lot more, especially when we open up the platform, because it features a lot of the centered path of the regimen for woman and the regimen for man, which is definitely different because we do function differently.
Well, they gave me a radiation pill a while ago for my thyroid disease I had, and I just now started paying attention to what you're saying on your website about detoxing. I started out kind of like the cheap way. I went and got the Gaia detoxing herbal tea, and I've been doing that, and I've been drinking a lot of aloe pure leaf, to cleanse my body at night, and I do lemon and olive oil for my liver. Am I on a good path that way of doing it? Because I really don't have much money, I just do hair.
For sure. I mean, and remember, your intentions are the strongest. What you're doing, the actions are the will. That shows, as they say, that states the intention. So it's important that you stay on the path with what you have. And then obviously you can transmute these elements in your consciousness. But so the belief is the most important thing, although you can get on things that are much more vivid than others. And so, yeah, I would continue in that direction and also link with us, because there's certain things that we have, stuff that doesn't cost much at all. It's just bare bones, really, and that stuff will last for a while, and you can take care of your water, and you can take care of things that are really more the points of how you would really take care of your body, which, just putting the energetic potential. Yeah, actually, yeah. Well, like I told the lady, well, now we have one that's alkalizer. And I didn't want to turn this into a call about products, but I would wait for 2 or 3 days. If you're on the resistance, you'll get the email, because this to me is the most, we're always looking for the most cost efficient way. And some people tie these kind of conversations into needing money, but I'm looking for certain elements to fix the system so I can jump off the blood, so I can get into a higher frequency and maintain that frequency. It's very simple to me. And I have personally had the leisure, especially with several of my friends, to be able to investigate quite a few different things. And we found a lot of stuff. And a lot of stuff is just, it's way beyond like the monatomics. But traditionally, just to start building up the body from the base up, you really need to work with the blood. And that's what I'll say just in that. And then the blood can be purified with certain kind of potential. And I don't even really get too much on it on the conversation, but just, again, look out for that email, and then you'll see something that'll be able to assist things a lot more. And, it's just real time. You see how it works. It's like we just find about this like maybe a week ago, and then now we're just getting it together so that we can get it to everyone.
Well, thank you, my sister. You are beautiful, too, and thank you, Sevan.
You're welcome.
Bless you. I'm going to welcome
Tampa, Florida, love you, Sevan.
For sure.
I'm going to welcome, thank you guys so much for calling. I'm going to welcome in caller 832. Caller 832, welcome to the call.
Hi. Am I on?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sure. I can hear you fine.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, I got one question for Sevan. Hi, how are you? I'm Souli.
I'm doing exceptionally well. Thank you for calling in.
Very nervous. This is weird. I've never actually been on a talk show before, so.
It's okay.
I'll get it. I'll be calling in more and more, so I'll get it. Anyway, what is the name of that breathing technique that you keep mentioning?
This is the crazy part. Remember, I've been studying breathing almost as long as I've been studying water. And then I get in there with some of these people like this Kundalini Ram Dass breathing. We'd be about to blow a gasket in there. And I'm still like wondering if I got to do all of this. Maybe me and Kundalini are going to have a falling out today because I think I blew the left ventricle in my eyeball. But serious, like many of these breathing techniques that they purport to do things. Now, I'm not saying they don't. It's just, come on, help me. Help me out. Start from where I'm at with this. So this breathing technique is not actually named anything. Like I haven't found it anywhere. I would have been doing it already. I was showed this by someone else. And man, if my workload is incredible. Like I'm delegating more these days, but it seems like more stuff is flooding in. But I got 2 videos to do. One video is to show what this water is reading out at after we put this element in there. The second video is exactly what we're talking about now, because this breathing technique it's basically kind of common sense to how the body needs to bow. Like when you're breathing out, you have to bow forward. And this is, of course, on your knees. And then when you're breathing in, you have to bend backwards. And this pushes and forces all the air in and out of the body. And within a couple of those rotations, and again, it's not going to do me any justice to explain it on the thing, with a couple of those rotations, and then when one comes up on their knees, because again, there's water in the knees, which was another discovery a while ago, the vibration that goes through the body at that point, it conducts, and then you quicken. That's the easiest way I can explain it. It's like you leave for a moment, but you come back. And some people confuse this, may have confused this with other breathing techniques with passing out. But in this case, you're not passing out because you don't have enough oxygen, because the body has enough oxygen. Actually, it's over-oxygenated. It's passing out because it has this clock that it thinks it's supposed to get a breath by a certain point, and if it doesn't, it should pass out. And this is the crazy thing about the body. Like when you really peep the body, it's like its own silent character. But just as soon as you're breathing and blinking your eyes and you're not controlling that, it's what's controlling that because it's into survival. So that's also what becomes the gap between if you can get out of the body, because the body thinks that you're going to die it's going to die if you leave it. And in a certain sense, it does, because when you come back, you're not going to be the same way that you were before. So you change the vibratory frequency of the body. Now you're not eating the same things anymore. Now you don't have the same friends anymore. They got to go. Then you pack up things and move. Shoot, the wife may even go. And it's because the frequency change. But remember, the body has already determined in the current lifestyle that you're living in, the body is not a voyager. It wants to build a hole and go deeper into it. So it's already determined, hey, this is cool. Look, if we don't rock the boat, don't get these folks mad at us and get us on this list. Look, let's just keep accepting this check. Look, it didn't work anyway, those stuff that they were talking about. You're okay. So it's going to constantly reinforce this fear-based voice of, hey, basically just relax, this is it. And this is what, if there's any kind of battle, this is what we're actually battling with. And so, hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight on.
It does. So, well, I actually had another question, and you touched on it with the wife thing. But so you're going to do a video about the breathing, right?
Yeah, because it would just do it injustice to explain it. Now, I did one video. It's called Whole Body Breathing. Actually, no, it's called the Master's Pose. And that can be Googled somewhere. And the Master's Pose was the beginning of it but it needed this next level of enhancement, which was still amazing, though, to walk in there and the guy was like, okay, do this. And then when I saw the Master's Pose, I was like, oh, it's the Master's Pose. And then, but there was a bowing of the body. And then because I've been breathing for, years, and I know how to take myself out of consciousness within 3 breaths. And it had to be developed over a year and a half of basically over oxygenating the body and then cutting the air supply. But the body's still oxygenated. And I'm not telling anyone to do this, because if you don't know what you're doing, you just get a headache. But what happens is that when the body's over oxygenated, it's not going to die. But it thinks it does. And then Kundalini, which I suspect is its own thing. Kundalini is like, okay, we are about to die, so let's get ready to do our thing. And I explained this the other day. It's so spot on. But see, when you die, something leaves your body. What is that? They say, oh, it's the soul. It's more specific. And it's tied into the Kundalini. Because when you start to hold the breath, the Kundalini is like, oh no, I guess we're about to have to soul travel, because she's about to die. Let me get ready to climb the spine. And that's what it does. It starts moving. You feel the energetic potential moving through the spine, and then there's a rush or a pop in the head. Pop. And then, it's like riding a wave then. And for a while you fall off, meaning you just lose consciousness kind of, and you come back. But once you can ride the wave, what happens is that, in a nutshell, you're in another world, but you also know that you're in this world. And that's where it all begins. And I'll say that one time. It's just like lucid sleep. You know you're dreaming, but you're awake in a dream. And this takes a conscious effort.
I have had one or two lucid dreams, but I have noticed during my meditations that my breath, when I'm focusing on nothing at all, my breath becomes very shallow, almost like I'm not even breathing.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. To a point where you have to ask yourself, did I just take a breath? Do I need to breathe? And this screws it up too, by the way. Like, because as we talked about the other night on the show, the Hanuman, the monkey mind, will attempt to grab the Kundalini before it's about to make its circuit, which is what the Ankh shows, where the circuit is to go back around and then go back down the back. That means now it's not afraid. Because you notice how the whole concept of what everyone's trying to do is just get out of here, right? It's like, I got to get out of here. But what if I was saying that there was no out of here in the tense that we think it? There's an in here. You see what I mean? So in every tense, what we're looking to do is keep the energy flowing through our body until it keeps basically awakening and quickening us. And so, to say what's going to happen in the great beyond is just, erroneous, especially to do it in English. But the reality is now the way things are cooking up on the dimension, it seems to be in our best interest to start figuring out what Club Afterlife is going to consist of. And also to do this on, it's funny. I love it because I love it in a way that it's entertaining, but it's so serious. Like I say, why so serious? And what I mean by that is that just still the story that's running and some of the people who've accepted the roles in that story, because that's the other thing. There's a dramatic play going on here. It's a drama. That's why they love the Hollywood so much. But there's a bigger drama going on, and that's the world with all these characters, right? And so these characters, like the guy was saying, so 8 billion of us, and everyone wants to be on top. So with that alone, you're going to get individuals that are willing to connect more with themselves, maybe not balance, but connect more with themselves in order to exercise, in a sense, some other distinct capability. And I think that can work two ways, and just to not go into duality with it. And I'm one of those individuals that I'm looking to metamorphosize my consciousness into the next stage of my evolutionary honor, which to me is balance. And then also, I feel like from what I've studied and what I know, because I can't speak for other people, but I've seen that this kind of energy is catchy. It's like a virus. See, some people think that a virus or a cold or something, another person can catch it, right? So let's lose this whole idea that we can't affect each other. Like, you come in here with a cold and you give me the cold, I'm affected. So this other stage of consciousness says, oh, no, you can't be affected by anything, blah, blah, blah. And that's great, but is it really true? So the reality is that we are being affected, and other people are being affected by what we're doing. So if we can send out a very strong wavelength, and we're doing it now, but sending out very strong wavelengths that are a specific kind of frequency, it does create, synchronicity is not this hocus pocus. It creates this stream. That's the easiest way for me to explain it. It's a stream, and you can tap into that stream and pull things out of that stream. And it's basically like the end of the movie. It's in between. It's a rip in the dimension. It's a place where, just like the Metamorphosis talk about, you can pull the primal materia, which is basically the thing that everything is made from, right from the envelope itself, and then begin to use it to manifest. But remember, because that's called creating. We're doing that now. We do that with babies. The primal materia is still the one that is everything is being constructed from. So I think that where errors start going in at that time is when someone takes the primal materia and then says that, oh, it doesn't basically give credit for what the primal materia really is. Like that this comes from everything. This comes from the nature. It comes from, why trying to be exclusive with it. Like it comes from our club papacy, club Jesuit right here in the Vatican. We are the vicegerents of it. You see what I mean? And that's what's running throughout the land. And so that's also what I look in myself to see, and constantly, day after day, is there any part of my consciousness, just to make it home, is there anything about my consciousness that's doing that? Am I judging other people? Am I looking to be judged by other people? Hey, man, that's great. Man, you did great. Am I looking for that? Because all of these highlight flaws in the character. And so when you're ready to do the real work on yourself, that's really what it's about. It's about going back on yourself, because there's certain things that you're not going to allow anybody to tell you, and you're not going to respect them saying that to you because of the level you feel like they're on. So you're the only person that can do this for yourself. And so this is what it's about. And the breathing technique works out very well, because the difference between the lucid dream and this is that everything that you're seeing is on you. It's right on you. So let me explain this very briefly, and then I'll be done with this. Remember, in the dream, still, there's a buffer there. This is what I was explaining to the lady. That's why you can't go and talk to somebody in the physical world unless you can either go through a back door or you can somehow knock down the wall, which means you have to have a lot of will to talk to someone from the dream world, where the dream world is actually positioned in the relativity of space-time, okay? But the front door, meaning the actual going through the breathing process to get yourself into the other state of consciousness, that world is right on top of this one. So even from an energetic level, everything that you see has way more impact. And this is the strangest thing. It's like, remember, you can be in a dream and see some wild stuff. But why doesn't it, it may even shake you up a little bit, but why doesn't it do like it would do if you saw it here in the reality? Think about this. If you saw it here in the reality, right, came in the front door, you may tear everything up trying to get out of there. Or, how would you feel? It would be amplified, right? So why can you see it in the dream world, though, and it's even at times okay? You're not afraid. Because there's a buffer, and See, the soul and the spirit, they know there's a buffer. So it's like, nanny, 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 you can even kill me in here, but I can't really die because I'm actually somewhere else. And this is called a simultaneous. Okay, they say most humans are simultaneous, meaning you have several of yous running around these hypercubes, and if they happen to destroy one, we're not going to put they into it, but if something happens to destroy one of them, it doesn't matter. There's another one running another timeline of decisions that you made on another path. And again, some people get into that. They get into, well, what did I do in my past life? And I want to know about all my past, and they start to see the dreams, and then they're enveloped by it. See, what we're talking about is new, because new was what, that's to me, there's grades of this energy, just like a piece of bacon versus some spirulina or hydrogen molecule. You see what I mean? So there's grades in duality. And in conclusion, never be fooled about duality not having a hierarchy. See, in totality, there's no hierarchy. That's proven, that's known. But in duality, because we start splitting things up, you will get where something may have a little bit more power than something else. And this is based on most of the time knowledge. And so that's why we always pursue knowledge in a certain sense, to be able to give us the information that we need of understanding what's going to give us energy, or synergy is now the word we're using. And this is because, for the simple fact that makes knowledge the future. And I'll say it one more time. That makes knowledge the future. Once you are in possession of certain kind of knowledge, now you can make the quantum leap. And so that's what it is. And so just to close it down there, I mean, that's the difference between the front door and the back door, what the breathing can really do, and then how that really affects one's experience to what they see in the spiritual planes.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I guess I'll get off now and let someone else get on. But it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I will. You'll be hearing from me again.
Well, likewise, bro. That was amazing insight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to welcome in Anonymous. Anonymous, welcome to the call.
Hello, Mr. Sevan. How are you all doing?
Oh man, I'm doing excellent. Thanks for asking.
How about
awesome. My name is James L, and it's kind of ironic. I just was introduced into Sevan about a week ago, and I've been watching his videos and just really engulfed in his teachings. And I'm calling from Mexico, and I just left Belize, which is I guess pretty close to Costa Rica, which is where I believe Mr. Sevan is, and enjoying the energy down this area. My question is, with this whole conscious movement and awakening, I guess, that's arriving on the planet, because it seems like, I know the conscious movement and the metaphysical movement has been going on for quite some time, but in a massive number, you see a lot of people waking up, or what they call waking up to the realities of what's going on and just their total livelihood. And so my question was about 4 or 5 years ago, I went through a time where I was incarcerated, and while I was in college, I was incarcerated. Long story short, I went through this period where my father's a minister, and it comes through a line of ministers, but I wanted to be the different guy, the black sheep of the family. So while incarcerated, I'm going to make this as short as I possibly can, I told God and screamed out to God, or whoever God was, the great Almighty, the Creator, the Most High, I want to know who you are. If I'm going to teach your word and spread this word, I need to know who you are. And ever since then, dramatically, I was released from prison. I received a job on the radio out of nowhere. Wasn't even in my career field. Did that for a while, then moved out of the country, which kind of surprised the whole family. And now I'm moving in Mexico, and now I'm on this whole metaphysical learning adventure. All this stuff is kind of just running into a course that I'm just like, whoa, kind of getting blown away. And then when the young lady was talking about numbers and the number 7, and that's my, I guess, number that my number. I was born on 777. And so it's kind of like, okay, what's going on? Am I being directed? Is there a collective consciousness that's being directed into a certain area where certain people who have done these certain steps, like I stopped eating meat completely, cold turkey, pun intended, a couple of years ago, just stopped. And ever since then, everything about my whole life has changed. My people, places, and things have totally changed, and concepts on life and everything. So I guess that's just my question, is like, is this collective thing, I know it's worldwide, so I just want you to, if you can, give me your outlook on it. It's like, I want to know how beautiful this rainbow is.
Well, for sure. Well, I wanted to first make sure that, that was not my line that was cutting off. Just very briefly, I did get the whole message though, but I just wanted to check with the hosts just to make sure that you can hear me clearly. If you hear me breaking up or something, I may need to reset my line or something, but I think that I'm okay.
Yes, you're okay.
But yeah, it's just like I was saying before, that there is a lot of connections, and it's interesting because we can now see people at times, and we can even determine at that point, man, somehow he's a part of the soul family. And then, what we know is that it's like humanity, just as you mentioned, it is like a rainbow. You find people that have more of the similar kind of path, and then but there's billions of people here, so you can even have 50,000 of people that are just basically on that one wavelength and moving through it. But I think there's something new arising, because maybe a combination of all of these frequencies, because it's the being that says, okay, yeah, I get all that, so what's next? It's like, instead of just getting fascinated with this, this 12 sign zodiacal base with the hidden 13th sign for the hidden mystery kind of structure or storybook, now we're ready for the parents to, kind of stop telling the stories and get us really into what we're here for. And so when you start getting into that, it's either world building, because that's why we use the term world builder, because see, remember, the human being can create another human being, and that's a shadow of an entire planet. So world building then is that when you actually, and that, of course, not saying that everyone wants to be a world builder, you see, but for those who are building worlds, then they would take their first step, which is they go through an incarnation where they actually have a child here. And then they have to rear the child, or here or another planet or whatever. They rear the child and take care of the child. Now, remember, the child is not always physical. It doesn't mean a baby. It could be a homunculus, meaning a child that is inside of you that you're responsible for keeping. It could also be an idea, which is an external manifestation of you that you must take care of and bring it to life and sustain it throughout the world. So you see, there's different levels depending upon how the mind is juxtapositioned on the individual that they manifest this child. Okay? But the same thing still applies. So you either go out the back, meaning that the person doesn't want anything to do with any more incarnations, is ready to envelop themselves in the all there is, and has to basically erase all their memory and knowledge of everything in order to envelop themselves into the prima materia, basically. And it's known in a certain sense that there's no coming back, because after all, there will be no backwards, forwards, or any of that where you're going. So that's why you find that now the human being is a little bit more partial to wanting to figure out how they're going to keep things like incarnations going on, different projections, other worlds, those kind of things. We would kind of be like very difficult to deal with if we didn't have those kind of thoughts, because that's, you see, like, imagine talking to someone all day that doesn't have any ideas to go anywhere and beyond in the world and be an explorer, right? None of that. Right. So that shows us that we're really explorers. That's the only way we got really this far, because two ways. One, we wouldn't have had nothing to motivate us. And two, we wouldn't have anywhere to go. So how can we keep that exploration going on? And I just believe that these external explorations are wasting a lot of money. Like they bankrupt Russia with one of them, and they're not getting very far. NASA is not giving any information, but they give us some Photoshop back, and that's what we're getting. So if we look at the budget, this is just crazy. It shows you as clear as itself, because NASA is Nazi. It's the highest member of the Sanhedrin. So basically the same thing the Messiahs have always been dealing with, and there's more than one, okay? So they dump all this money. Now, how much money? Like, it's crazy numbers, right? Into this going outer space. What if we took all the money and went to inner space?
Right.
I mean,
right.
Simple turnaround, like, it wouldn't even have cost that much. And this just lets us know, though. That's why we were saying from duality, which is 2, to wholeness, which is 0, just doing everything that everyone's not doing, looking for some kind of bearing, to oneness, realizing that, you know what, this is all part of the same thing. And I just keep fooling myself through judgment. I keep judging this. He's good. He's bad. This light, this cold, this dark, this hot. And I keep getting caught in these stories, which, man, if you start adding those kind of integers, it becomes like a choose your own adventure book. You can say and go into any kind of storyline, and it could really even get good. I mean, you're a natural actor, right? So are we going to do that, or are we going to pierce the veil, and then we're going to get into what we are as a totality? And see, remember, on every single level, there is the person that you even see next to you. And this is why it doesn't really matter what everyone else does. See, the person that you see next to you has a higher self too. And this is what I witnessed in one of these really clear dreams, is that we were all moving around each other and doing things together on this other plane. But it was our higher selves. And the reason why I knew it was our higher selves is that you can recognize everyone as they really were, kind of, except they did everything good. It's like the person you know who can't drive, man, they were swinging that thing. The person you know who's doing all this crazy stuff, they were doing, because it's a shadow world. So it kind of makes sense, this world in a sense. And I realized that what we're really doing in a sense is attempting to go faster than our shadow so that we don't have a shadow. We don't go back to the past. And this is something that I really want people to understand. See, when you have been hurt before, or any part of your life that there wasn't really much going on, you were in a low spot, okay? Now that becomes this time in history that becomes a frequency for you. And this is why time is really a frequency. So you can get 20 years into the future, got completely away from that, done well for yourself, family, kids, whatever, and then get into one low spot because of something going on, and then actually rewind yourself back in the time, back to that moment when you had that same frequency on you. And then what happens is it becomes resonant. It really resonates. If you can hear the frequencies in the room, they start to resonate off of each other. And this is called the shadow, because the shadow can be developed off of a lot of depression, being pushed down. Okay. And then so when you're depressed, you get pushed down, and this develops what's called the shadow. And the shadow is basically a lower frequency, a shell, or a mold that you were stuck in for a certain period to a point where it's outlined you, just like a child drawing a snowman in the snow. Okay. And so then when you move into a high frequency, you break that shell. And now you're way away from that frequency. But if you ever start going back into that frequency, it can envelop you again. You see what I mean? So this is how we're really moving through this, is I'm constantly basically avoiding and shining brighter. Basically, it's not avoiding. You're shining so bright, you're casting no shadow. You get it? So if you reach a certain frequency, you'll shine so bright. You can see, you can do this in cameras. There's a way that you can shine a light so bright, and then you shine them against each other that there's no shadow. You have to be able to do that if you're working camera equipment. So it lets us know on another level, there is a way to configure yourself to where you have no shadow. This is mainly staying out of the past, keeping going with the new accelerated balance frequency, et cetera, et cetera.
I have one quick about this new consciousness that's arriving on the planet, and everyone's kind of waking up at the same time. The Mayans, which I'm in the Mayan area, you're kind of South Mayan area, believed in this 2012 and the end of the world, which we know is just the end of a cycle of consciousness and a cycle of thinking. Now, could that be what right now? It's like waveforms just hitting the earth, different times. Because I know they spoke about it being 2012, and people thinking, well, it's 2014. Actually, some people, I go by the year 2007. I use the Ethiopian calendar because I understand the Ethiopian calendar as the original calendar, and now we're under the Gregorian calendar, and there was a false adding of some years there. So could that be the 2012 phenomena with the new consciousness arriving on the planet?
Let me tell you what's happening. You can make a 2012 happen because it's just a lineup. It means that basically the person start getting, in most cases, so scared of what they were subconsciously seeing on the dimension that they realized that they should go into activation, and then they decided that was going to be 2012 or a lineup. So what I'm saying is that this phenomena, people starting to wake up, is not based on externally the lineups of the cosmos. It's based on other individuals who line their cosmos up, the real one, inside, and then that resonated to other individuals. So it never happened on an external level because you can cause a 2012 at any point. What happened was some people adapted the 2012 principle and realized it had to do with their chakras lining up, since the chakras are planets, and then they lined themselves up. And then when you do that, because you come into balance, everything that you come in contact with reflects that. And then it just spreads. It just ping-pongs off everything. And then those people were more affected based on that than geological conditions, because we do cause those geological conditions. Like, remember, I'm a big fan of the external world not being the major power point. The internal world is the major power point. The external world responds to the internal world. When man and woman clean themselves up inside, the planet will regenerate itself right away. It doesn't. It responds to how we act. And I'm telling you, I know this as a fact. This is not a game. If you go into the jungle and you open your third eye, if you start feeling afraid and you start feeling scared and sad, all the trees and everything respond and look like that. And then when you smile, that's why they tell you when you go into that, remember, if you're going to play around, like talking to that guy earlier, if you're going to play around with the front door, the last key to that is to smile. You must keep a smile on your face because that's what opens up the third eye region. So this tells you that, not a fake smile either, this tells you that if you haven't reached that harmony where you can smile within, then you can't open up the top chamber. You can't go into the holiest of holies, because you're just going to go into fear of what you see there and close the door again. So this is the integral part of the consciousness. It's real time, Lord, and advanced stuff, but it's fascinating. Because if you could think about standing at the door of your consciousness, looking down into the abyss of thought, and then getting ready to make that leap because you trust in yourself enough to know that your higher self will catch you. And then you go beyond the physical world into the worlds that are unknown except for to you. Man, because what it brings out of your, see, like even the guy earlier, what he was talking about with the jury, what happens is it brings out of your character, because don't think that you just die. That's the fear side of things. You don't divide. You're going to collect more. You're not going to die. So the reality, because you're going in the different direction. But the reality is that what you add to yourself is the character that you're missing. So remember, we're fractalized right now. So this is why you can't stand up and dance a jig and then get on the piano and sing off like Legend, right? And it's because there's been division within your traits. But those traits can easily be collected back when one comes to total relevance of self. This is why when a person starts really getting into the energetic principles of the body, they start being able to write songs, they start being able to draw, they start being able to do things, even what they've been carrying on at, a lot better, until the point where it starts extending into them gaining other levels of abilities and other traits. And so this is because the person has now become more connected with the everything side of themselves. They're no longer saying that, I'm John, I work at this job and I can do this. And you see what I mean? All those limitations, those shells, those shadows, those lower frequencies start to fall off.
Awesome. Thank you for the end. Thank you for the hosting, Queen. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for calling. All right, everyone, we're going to begin to wind the show down in a few moments here. If you want to or have any additional questions or comments, feel free to come into the Q&A queue by *6N to the queue. And again, we'll be closing down in a few moments. Also want to, for those that may not know that are new to the call or new to the teachings of Sevan, you can visit www.astralquest.com. Again, that's www.astralquest.com. The other site is www.resistance2010.com. Again, www.resistance2010.com. And then lastly, www.secretenergy.com. Is it the last one, Secret Energy, is that live yet, or that goes live soon?
Yep, we're going to be launching in mid-January, hopefully, and that is the open source spirituality platform, and it's basically just a platform that is catered to linking people together, and those who have different things that they can present will have an opportunity to do that. Likewise, the connection with other people who've presented some great work that I've met over time or that I know of will be featured there. So it's just a dynamic site. There's so many things that it actually solves. I think it'll be one of the number one spots for linking people together with synchronicity.
And then with the code of Matrix, that's available on those sites as well?
Yeah, actually, the code of the Matrix is available. You can just Google that title. It is a free download. Still also keeping in mind it was 5 or 6 years ago, so I was definitely headlong in Duality. I feel like it's a great work to push the reset button, meaning that it's kind of like a smack in the face to looking into the language for its underlining meaning, to looking into religions for their obvious meanings, and to really start getting into centering self. So basically to cut off a lot of the ties and bonds and things that have been really pulling a person down so that they can get some clear space. And this kind of gets them poised in life to get ready to make another move from where they are. There's always some kind of move or something that changes, whether it's in their career, whether it's in their physical locale. And this is what we call the constellation is moving. This is, you can now go and work from another station rather than being, in that same mold that you've been in. So all of this that we've been talking about tonight is very important for people to know that we've given a external explanation of it, but it's also very easy to see how this stuff takes place inside from day to day with a person's self. And so the only thing that we've done is we've just translated that into, a conversation. But this is definitely about a person's spiritual progress and about the different things that they can do while they're in this existence. So we just want, when I was younger, it was all fun and games. Like, I remember it was all an adventure. So I know in that stage of mine, I'm the most effective, at least for myself, because I can be there for everyone. And so I'm telling everyone now for sure, this is a real adventure. There's some stuff to crack. There's some definite deprogramming that one has to do to self. I've been through this years of deprogramming. I've gone through different things within the spiritual field. I've kind of, I've definitely navigated my way through it, but there's been some bumpy parts. But I would just like to say to everyone, especially those that are tuning in, that all I've been doing personally is working on making myself balanced. And I know that we all have these paths that have different things going on, but that's where you get an opportunity to work on your judgments. Because what you'll still realize is that knowledge is knowledge. So you get an opportunity to take this knowledge and actually apply it. And then you don't necessarily have to get tied into the man itself. Just take the knowledge. There's nothing that we're really asking for people. So it's always important to say that and to tell people that, just to clear the air. And so to allow people to really begin to work on themselves. Also, there's realmdynamics.com, which is where all the elements are. And that also is a good website to study in regards to what has been discovered about what can be done with the body.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to welcome in, we have another caller. Welcome in caller 954. 954, welcome to the call.
Hi, I am Allison, and Sevan, it is a pleasure to be able to speak with you. I recently became familiar with you over the summer, and I became completely enthralled and fascinated with what you have been saying. And I haven't listened to the program the whole time tonight because I came on late, but I have two questions. My main question is, there's so much talk these days about race, and I would just basically like to sum it up and say that my whole life I've always believed, even as a child before there was actually biological and scientific proof and evidence that Homo sapiens sapiens is the human race, and that the whole idea of race, particularly in this country and in Europe, is just a human construct in order to allow, the elite to be able to divide humanity. But why is it that human beings are so willing to, rather than have a question and look up the biology, why are human beings so willing to accept the fact that human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens, they're actually different races of human beings?
Well, mainly because of the chosen program. After the duality begins and the spectrums are emitted, obviously one can oscillate through several different incarnations where there are different hues, which is the key to the human, different colors, and then stay on that polarization. In fact, coming in incarnation as a specific color in many tenses does equal a specific kind of life. Hello. So what happens is, meaning that you would be subject to certain things, but that's all a part of the program in a tense of how the spectrums slide themselves out. And then whatever kind of reincarnation that one develops for themselves, they actually will go into the path or the color or the hue that will work out that incarnation a lot better for them, right? So what happens, though, is the reason why that so many people will adapt the racist standpoint is the judgment. It's basically to prove that one race is stronger than the other, and that sometimes, in many cases, especially what you see what's going on now, is exercised in who's ultimately going to win. Is it going to be the white people or the black people. But these two components, and that's why it was important to realize what was being brought forth, especially in Kemet, which was the 9, because there's 2 other colors, which are white and black. So you have the 7 colors, which are the color spectrum, and then you have these 2 other colors, white and black, which say that they're the absence of color, but really the absence of color is clear. So what happens is that they're like ping pong players. One sends one ricochet, and then it goes down the line, and then the other one sends it back, and this goes on ad infinitum. Now, how this looks from a higher dimension is just basically like energy. That's why they always say, hey, it's all energy, because it's 2 opposing forces clashing with each other until there's some kind of resolution, basically a baby, that comes out of it, and then that should have a blend of both of those components. And then it'll keep going on with the baby as other ones, and the babies are the other component. And this is how this is the funkendating component of the dimension, by the way. Like this same coming together and the friction that's tied into generation of life, which is basically, like I said, it's cold fusion. That kind of intensity with orgasmic energy is in a tense, very, if you wanted to say violent, I guess that would be the term. It's very aggressive, very fleshly, right? So it's just all a part of the whole thing. So people are looking for more of the amp up of the frequencies by, the whole race game, the whole race war. And so obviously what a person gets a chance to do if they're going to expand beyond that is collapse the prism. Because the prism is synonymous with the prison. And the prison is basically what keeps light trapped inside. That's why they're shining a light in, and then the light divides from there. So now when it's divided, it's trapped in there, because until it comes back together, it can't go back through where it came in. So all that what you're seeing on the CNN and all this, of course, as they've always been, is to drive that line. They always say it's a line, it's a race line. What we talk about today, those lines are the buffers in between frequencies. So the more that line is drawn, then it's like a wall, right? That would be the better term. It becomes like a wall. That's what a line really is. When you come down the dimension, there's a wall. So the wall is the law. And who enforces the laws? So you see, this is the division that comes into the dimension that creates the hierarchies and creates these different levels that everyone exists on. So what I do is, because obviously, like we said, judging, because even watching it gets you into judging, gets you judging what side you're going to be on, get you judging if, judging goes everywhere. But remember, their timing, how much time is being burned, because the extreme waste of time in this case, because all of it will look the same. So if you, and I'll make this very simple, if you went to the store and you saw 2 people arguing, it is the same concept of the entire thing that is going on with the race wars, no matter who's participating, especially from the higher level. It's like, oh, it's all duality. But to the person who is right in it, they think that it's all different and one is more wrong than the other. Like, you should not do that. But we owe them. There's always desire for payback. Because remember, most of this is also still based on a previous history of what we've discovered of one race that completely overthrew every other race. But then if you go back a little bit further, you'll find that other race had actually enslaved those other people before they even got started, really. And then if you go back further, you see, so you'll find that, even look in the Bible, there was never the point of peace there. There was always wars. So every book that we refer to doesn't refer to any time of when there was actually some real connectivity going on the planet. It always refers to the wars. And so this is why. It's a dualistic plane. It's everyone's responsibility to somehow figure out balance. And then when they do, they seem to basically go into another part of this world that is balanced. And like the gentleman said before, you end up in places like Costa Rica. You end up in places, not saying that any place is perfect, but inside. You're inside. When it perfects itself, then the environment is that way too. And then the only way you jump back into that stuff is if you want to turn it on and start looking at it. And I'm not saying turn away from it and ignore it, but to really do something about it is to actually put yourself into a stage that would quell that. So last thing, see, Hermes had this rod in his hand. And this rod, which is talked about in the tablet of Hermes and the emerald tablets, it sent off vibrations, right? And so what it's talking about is that this rod is a balancing rod. That's why it has a center pillar, a globe, and 2 snakes coiling around it. This is also the caduceus staff. Okay, and what this symbol means is they would say that this is the most powerful weapon. And what it was is it was a balancing rod. So it didn't mean what this person was talking about. They can be off their rocker, you just dong, and they will go into balance. And so there could never be anything that was a greater weapon than being able to put things into balance. You see what I mean? Because if you got this weapon that's going to smoke this person and these beings can't even die, you're going to be dealing with stuff for a long time. So why not just balance them out? And so that's what I'm focusing on with people now, is to understand that to go beyond where these dualistic planes are, you're going to have to balance it out. You can't jump all into it and then expect to get any kind of difference. You'll be just the same as the other 6 billion that are trying to handle it that way.
Well, I think another part of my question, which I still don't know that I got a clear answer on, are we, even though we are the different colors and shades and all of that, are we not all the same species, as in Homo sapiens sapiens?
No,
I mean,
no, we're not. That's not factual. People are actually based on the flora and fauna of the area that their ancestors were from, and this would be very similar to what you see with a pyramid, where there's a base pillar which is black, and then the spectrum goes up from there. Each person coming into existence during a different part of the timeline, when their frequency needs to be constructed until the entire timeline is built. Then from that, once the timeline is built, there's nothing new under the sun. The entities then cycle through the timelines in different stages of that house, the zodiac, the spectrums of colors, and the different preferences through their reincarnations, and that basically becomes the entire story. So in certain tenses, Homo sapiens sapien is the exclusion of canines and many of the other different animals and species that make up us, which was why the indigenous showed us as totems. That when you went to their tribe, they had a totem, because it would be the boar, it would be the plant that was indigenous to that area, it would be the frog, because there was already a knowledge of what the Kemetans knew, which was that there were vessels that were created, in a sense, to work us all the way up to finally becoming Homo sapiens sapien. And so Homo sapiens sapien stretches across, or even not even called that, but stretches across this timeline where all are present at one time, just in a different phase. And this is what creates those different frequencies. So you got how you can understand all this, sister, is by the eyes. The eyes of the actual entity, like a goat, sidereal eyes, a cat, a combination between a feline and a snake, the concave eye. Those eyes are the limitations of the wavelength that entity can access. And then each of those wavelengths is like pancakes. They just stack on top of each other. And that's what many of the ancient traditions, they speak about this very deeply, about these archonic worlds being developed, which are basically the arc. 2 by 2, meaning in duality, the arcs will come together. You will build the arc. So what you would be looking at then is like a big giant, let's say a ziggurat or a pyramid with different colors, and on each of those pancakes or wavelengths, you got different kind of energies that can all resonate the same frequency. You got different kinds of things that can all resonate the same frequency. Example, a very down and drowsy, depressed person is very similar to a willow tree. If you test both of their frequencies, they're almost the same. While a very astute, upright, straight person has another correspondence with not only an animal, a tree, an insect, etc. You see what I mean? So what you would see in that is, so it's easier than if you wanted to separate it, because it is in duality, is at wavelengths, like what frequency could these group of people actually holding? Because if anything slips into that frequency, whether it's an animal or whether it's another human being, they're easily accepted as part of the family.
Okay.
But you see what I mean? Like if a person goes to another frequency, let's say Chinese, and starts learning the language and starts tucking in with those people, if they really start becoming Chinese, the Chinese people will take them in like it's one of their own and be proud of it. So this shows you that it's wavelengths. So it's, the whole thing you're seeing in industry is polarization. And that's why these kind of stories the conversation stretches on hours, because there's stories and there's different things going on. But what we're talking about is getting out of duality. And concepts of the genus of species and separating them one from another is all a part of duality.
Okay. That gives me better clarification then, because I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yes, Mel. I mean, it's just basically collapsing the pyramid in order to get back to the other side.
And I have one other question, and it was rainbows were actually mentioned in, I think, 2 or 3 callers prior to me. And this may be rather a silly question, but I would like to know what the relevance or significance is that I see rainbows always, constantly. And I would just like to know if there is any particular reason why that would be.
Well, the rainbow became the symbol of the covenant, as you see in the most popular spiritual texts. And what it basically means, and it's kind of interesting what it really means, and just to make it very simple. There was a mountain called Harmon, and that's where we get our word harmony. And on that mountain, supposedly the angels, which are basically the different forms of frequencies, bound themselves together, that would be the bow or the rainbow, and then agreed to do this thing, which is basically the projection of the reality we're looking at. So in a sense, the rainbow is a reminder that, hey, it's still an illusion, meaning that there's another side of the rainbow when everything is back together. And then, you see what I mean? So there's somewhere over the rainbow. What are they talking about? They're talking about once you collapse the prism, you get rid of these 9 colors, not 7. Even though there's 7 visible, there's subsonics. So there's 2 more colors. And then when you collapse those together, bam, that's that space. So so it's a reminder then that to remember that over that rainbow, those colors come together, and that there is a totality there, and we are strong. See, here we're weak because we're in division, and that's all the whole division thing shows. It just shows the weakness of the division, but it has all still purpose in it, because when something is so potent, you need to dilute it in order to really understand what you're dealing with. And as children, we need that more than anything. We have to dilute our reality before we can actually come into totality. So this is the formula in which we're using. We're dividing it into these colors, and then we're experiencing these spectrums in certain integers and mediums until we get the full feel of it, and then we're like, okay, I'm fulfilled. Now I'm ready to expand, and then you birth. See, because remember, nothing is going to happen different than what's happened already before. It's just going to be in greater strength. So just like you came into this world and you birthed, like when you were in your mother's womb 9 months, you can't stay anymore because you're too big. Once you're in this womb here and you get too big, you got to go. So that's always what we can look forward to, is that direction. Now, obviously, there's the other direction, but we don't want to talk about that right now, meaning getting too degenerated and all that kind of stuff. We don't have to get into that. Well, yeah, we're just ready.
Okay, just one more quick question, and this is about the word miracles. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about this, and is what we call miracles through the energy of what we know as language, is that just like sort of a light bulb moment of recognition
to just make it very clear, it's the healing power of the spiral force. So how nature works is with phi, which is a spiral. And when you see the hands, in the center of the hands, there's a spiral there, and it's also in the sole of the feet, and it's also in the top of the head. Some people even have a swirl in the top of the head. And what this spiral force is, if you know how to use it, is it can funcondate. It can funcondate, and it can take life. It depends on what direction you're turning it. Okay? And so what happens is that a miracle is basically a description of an energy itself, like an angel. But this one being from the sea, that causes certain phenomena to happen. So that's the exact definition of the word miracle, and its connection with why amazing things happen when quote unquote miracles happen. And then to to understand it just clearly, it's because a lot of the primordial energy that resides still in this planet is in that ocean. And that just becomes off limits to most people. But it's very replete in the ancient traditions. And, there's a lot about it. But a lot of our foundation is in that water. And so there's a lot of different things there, a lot of life.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to answer my questions.
Sure. And then even if you look, just to be clear again, if you look at the word, it ends with coals. Coals is actually a word for like you hear circles, right? So Mary means the ocean, just as mar in Spanish means the ocean. So it's saying the ocean in circles or the spiral in circles. So it's that spiral force, which, many people are familiar with that do energy techniques, Reiki, those kind of things. That spiral force is very prominent in also spinning your aura and different things that are related to energetic principles that can cause real miracles.
All right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you so much for calling. I'm going to welcome in caller 586. Caller 586, welcome to the call.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
Excellent.
Hey, how you doing, Sevan? It's good to finally catch up with you, man. I've been following you for a minute now.
Oh, man, like that.
Well, yeah, I just had two quick questions. I wasn't going to hold you up too long. My first question was about synchronicity. Is synchronicity exactly something we can control? And because I see it happen a lot. Like you touched on the fact about being in court. I had a similar situation where I knew I was going to prison, but for some strange reason, the judge ended up letting me go home. Like it was like I controlled the moment, but I didn't understand it. So if you could touch on that. And my second quick question would be about, you say humans had an innate ability that was basically magic. Like, could you give me more insight on that and more understanding on it?
Sure. And I'll make these brief. And so what synchronicities are is, if you can see your life as somewhat of a circle, because time is a circle. So what happens is that when you start moving around that circle faster, you start to recognize things more because they're coming along more faster. And so then that's what synchronicity is. So the closer you get to the more synchronicities you generally get, it actually is synonymous with you getting to the 0 point of your own consciousness, meaning the point of your awakening, or you realize, oh my goodness, I know what all this is about now. So that's what really synchronicity is about. Now, when we're talking about these other abilities with the body, yes, the body does have various components that it can activate itself into that gives it more insight into what's going on these other wavelengths, okay? But also remembering what we're talking about, because remember, this is years and years and years of study and experience to finally get to the point of realizing what balance even means. Because it's not like somebody didn't tell me about balance before, but I still had a couple more entities that I needed to deal with according to my mental structure as far as just the whole vigilantism. So what I'm saying is that what happens in our consciousness now is we get an opportunity to go into a stage where we really can bend the threshold of what has been generally known for a human being to experience. But what this involves, though, is it involves us to make some changes to the life that generally is what most people don't do, until a point where it becomes, people become accustomed to make those trade-offs, right? And so meaning to let go of certain things in order to benefit certain things. And so in conclusion, what I would say is that, because it's a long show, I mean, I'm sure you've heard some of the work, so we go into it a lot deeper, but you could go right online and right at the body and start working it out, cleaning out the filters and doing different things to it in order to get it to be a lot more clear and a lot more awake. And then from that point, just like we mentioned earlier, the synchronicities begin to increase. your energetic field is actually increasing. And this gives you the thrust that you need to, if you happen to be in a vortex, if you find yourself just experiencing the same thing on Groundhog's Day, that's your sign of the vortex. If you're trying to thrust out of the vortex, you would need this kind of thrust. And I've experienced this also on the dream plane, where you're in need of this fuel. And that fuel, does really come from your motivations and how you're really seeing this. And that's why sometimes it's really our job to start presenting this in ways that do seem appealing to people, because some of the offerings that have been given about what will occur for you if you wake up don't seem to be that promising either. Like, sort of say, oh, yeah, we wake up and then we're going to end up on this other planet, and we're going to end up in this spaceship with these aliens, or, it just doesn't seem right to just the body alone. The body's like, I don't know if I'm going to go off on that venture, seeing I've been working myself up from amoeba. It just seems like we'd be risking too much. But so what I'm saying is that this gets a lot more involved with a step-by-step process of really working at the body more, and then you're working for those results. So, that's where that breath comes in. Those workouts come in, tapering down that diet really, so you just can't throw anything in the vehicle and go to war. Like I said, the mind may want something because it has taste, but then it goes to war with the liver because the liver can't handle it. So these kind of things is where the inner work really comes in at. And when you do that inner work, if there's anything that someone can promise, if I can say I promise something, I promise you that you do have abilities and things to activate too. That's like as clear as me sitting here and talking to you on the phone today. What that really is and how that is to present itself, it all depends on how much you're calibrating your vehicle and how much you really get into it. Because obviously it can stop altogether. I'm sure you've experienced when you kind of pull away from it completely, and then it still pulls you back in. And this is why I still personally believe that especially with, I can't say with everyone, but because I just don't use those kind of terms, but with a lot of people, it doesn't matter how far flung they get out on that other level of things or on that other polarization. That only means how strong they're about to fling back to the other side again. The thing is to get out of the extremes and get right into the center point, which is the zone. And remember, this zone and different things is useful for other stuff. It worked for basketball. It worked for a lot of different things, as you've seen. It's really a state in your consciousness where the consciousness is not fluctuating. Frequency is really heavy, even if everyone's yelling in the stands or some people are denying who you really are, or whatever the case is, it doesn't even matter. It's not fluctuating your frequencies. And then once you learn how to stay into that zone, it's a pure power zone. You really start to amplify so much and see things metamorphosize in your life. You basically become inundated. Remember, the inundated in the sense that you just have so much abundance. See, the planet is abundant, and this is what I was saying, and we're coming to a close because it has been a few hours. But here's what it is. See, the planet is naturally abundant, and it works on this phi stuff. This is the only way to really break it down and make it simple. It works on this phi. And the phi is very easy to see like this. Like if you plant some seeds, right, most seeds, it's going to sprout into a bunch of things. Like if you plant a wheat seed, it makes 7 stalks or a ton of stalks, right? So that's phi. Phi is very abundant. She's like a very abundant woman. But then there's pi, which is the pentagram, okay, in a certain tense. It's in a sense an artificial creation. It's like a GMO. Now notice how, peep it, a GMO, you can plant it and it'll grow a fruit. So it's not so illusionary that we can't eat this thing. But what's illusionary about it is you can't grow more with that. It's not abundant. And this is the only difference. It's a slight switch, but this is the only difference in what you're seeing out here now and what's going on. You got a war between pi and phi. And it's such a thin sliver because they can almost imitate life. And this is why you get people jumping up saying, well, we created and we discovered it and we just found this. That's pi. But Earth has been created, doesn't need to say anything. Will hit you with a wave as high as a 2-story building if it feels like, it needs to tell you something. So you see what I mean? So that's phi. A power that doesn't even need to start describing itself. So this is what we were talking about earlier, that sometimes things can try to reflect the power or reflect the light and then fall into getting other individuals thinking that they're the light. Okay? So that's what's so different about what I'm presenting, and my message is I'm not the light. I'm on my way to it, and I am it. And I'm magnifying myself more with it, and you can do the same thing. You see? So, but just to understand the roles here is like, I don't need to, I'm not going to take anything jumping in between me and it, evangels, messiahs, bodhisattvas, whoever. This is, all the real teachings show that you are supposed to reach this yourself. So that's the difference. Get away from the pie, which is basically the pentagrams on the flag, the upside down pentagram, the goats, the fame and all that different stuff founded on foolishness, the joker, all of those different things of what it stands for. And then get into the phi, which is basically the spiral force. It's actually the path that doesn't allow you to repeat yourself, because this is the only difference. See, pi is a circle, okay? So it's time. It's always going to keep repeating itself. Phi is a spiral. You'll never go back down into that same place you've been before unless you go into judgment. So that's why you got to get out of judgment and got to stop judging yourself, because the judging yourself, which is still based on mistakes you made in the past, pulls you down into your lower frequency or your shadow. And then now you've convicted yourself. So then all the terminology is all the same as what you deal with the legal system, because that's where they plagiarized it from. So then, you get the whole in the cell and, all of the stuff all the dynamics that exist within that realm is all replicated right there. And so that's also why people who've been through those experiences have a tendency to actually see the whole thing before many people do, because they realize there's this weird, uncanny similarity between being so-called in jail and then being out in the regular world, which is basically, it's just a bigger fish tank. You're still in a tank. And then so I believe that what happens also is that when people start feeling, just to answer the gentleman's question again earlier today about that 2012 thing, when people start feeling like they don't have enough room, they don't have enough space, they seek other space. And that space is inner space. It's because they can go into themselves and then they can start finding all of these amazing things. And it has a different kind of impact. The only reason why people have really been listening to this message and working with it, because it can get a little complex sometimes, and sometimes I don't articulate it properly, but it's about them. And it's fascinating to hear about yourself. It's not me getting on here talking about how big the muscles are or how well I can dance and all this kind of stuff. It's about, hey, look, this is what I discovered about us. You tell me if you got some of the same things going on, and then we'll mark it down and keep mapping this thing until we find our way into the Arabah or beyond the holies of holies, and we go through the sun with no fear. And I would rather we do that together, but I also know that we're always together. So I'm not going to nag myself all day with the Save the World program, acting like it's my responsibility to stop these folks with this nuclear arsenal, right? It's my responsibility to come into balance, to go into awakening to a plane that none of that had even taken place. And then it'll be like I woke up out of a dream. And so I'm telling you, you can script this thing. You can say what your life is supposed to exist with, or you can take the choices. So remember, the judgments are the choices too. The choices are somebody present to you, even a Republican and Democrat. I know you don't do any voting. You can't anyway. But you know what I mean. They give you these choices, and then they say, well, this is the choices. But that's not choices, because it's not the whole gambit of everything. So we stop choosing, we stop judging, we stop being biased, because when the synchronicities start to flow, the knowledge starts coming right onto your doorstep. But if you're looking at it like, this is Rosicrucian stuff, I don't read them, they're master masons, blah, 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 blah. There go the judgments. Or, this looks evil. And then, the whole lesson that day is to realize what exactly are the symbols that one needs to avoid, you see? So when you're non-biased, you don't attach yourself into the whole thing. You just are observing it and then growing based on the observation. And that's at least the best thing to do until you learn how to come out of duality. And then once you come out of duality, you can plunge back in Zion with compassion. See, compassion is the compass to Zion, but many people say they have compassion, but they don't. You can't say you have something that you've never had before, because you won't even know what it feels like. So real compassion is once you actually ascend, you come back and start helping people. Because see, that seems nutty. It's like you got out and now you came back in. This is like the prisoner who escapes and then locks himself back up. What the hell's going on here? But see, that's a master of the system. That's a time lord. It's like you can't hold that kind of person. So that's what if I speak to any youth and then some of the elders, that's what I aspire to be, to have both keys in and out of the world. So that way the biorhythm, meaning the ideas and things that were given birth. I have daughters. I have brothers and sisters here. You see what I mean? So I still personally am scripting a storyline that when I look at, I want to be pleasant. So nobody can take that away from me. You see what I mean? And that's where your will comes in at. That's also why you went home that day. But still remember, like we talked about on this show, and we're getting to the conclusion, the formula to gain an unbreakable link to the higher self, an inhabitant of totality. And then in the email I sent today, it says very clearly, the higher self is not a belief. Don't think it's a belief. It is a fact. There is a higher, more magnified version of you already functioning and actually in activity. And all you have to do is basically upload yourself, meaning to get out of this one frame of where you're at, one angle or one fallen angel version of you, and then get into the actual totality of collecting all this stuff up. And then you can do work anywhere. It doesn't matter what a person's talking about. It's like they're talking about the Christian thing, they're talking about the Islam thing, they're talking about the white thing, the black thing. It doesn't even really matter. It's like because the presence that you have, they just feel silly talking about that stuff because they realize it's all the external field they're building up to keep them from seeing inside of themselves. And then what they see in you is only a mirror. Remember, you don't even have to really do anything. They see a mirror and it reflects them back to you of how they used to be. Meaning that if you get into the perfected stage and you show yourself to other people or you express yourself to other people, they have a deja vu because they used to be just like you. And that's the conclusion of this. Remember, we didn't come from anything weak. Anything strong doesn't come from something weak. We came from something greater. We were greater. So we're going back to the past. There's no such thing as the future. We collapse time. So let people think about that. Let it boil the brain a little bit because it's a little bit hard to squeeze around, but you'll get it outside of time. And that's what we're talking about. It's a whole new thing. That's why the youth, this is bought for the youth because keep running the same code, the same programs, and they ain't working, man. We need to change something up. So don't be surprised if somebody gets thrown under the bus. Jesus may get thrown under the bus. We maybe decided that this time that it's not going to work with the whole dualistic traditions. So what I mean by that is you have to think, people that listen to this recording and those who will listen to it in the future, you have to think about our predecessors. And you also have to think about our youth and what they're going to experience 10 years from now and how are you raising them? And don't break their will. Remember, there's a way to break a child's will, and you have to be very careful with those kind of things because the world that they're going to go into, they're going to need that strength. And so that's another part of the dynamic of what we're getting into. That's secret energy children or secret energy kids. And just the whole aspect of how one brings a child into this world based on what it's supposed to look like in 10 years. Had we continued with this knowledge and started implementing it into our children's minds before they knew not. Like they, because think about how you would be if you didn't have to go through the deprogramming. But at the same time, think about what you will be when you do.
Right, man. That was just way too good for me.
Me too, man. It's a good place to,
I
go.
Appreciate it. I really appreciate it. But I just want to leave it off on this note, man. I've been listening to you for about 4 or 5 years, and I'm 22 now, and I'm from Detroit also, and I kind of had a troubled past, and now I'm kind of like, you giving me the type of insight that I always knew as a child that, it's something else going on here. Like, it's not what they're telling me. And now I'm not good or bad. I'm just consciously in the moment. So, man, thank you. I love you, brother.
Oh, man, I love you too, man. I mean, just for all those people who called in about the dreams, man, I did actually see this brother last night in the dream. I kid you not. Like, because when he even started talking, I was like, man, that's the guy from the dream. But I even told my mom, my wife was getting this morning, I was like, man, I was in this place in this dream, and I was with this man, we were talking, man, and I just knew it was you. But so people just understand that, I'm not going to say all the time when you see me in there, but realistically, man, it's something strange going on. I'll just say it like that, like something, I think all this stuff that we've been talking about, like many things we've experienced, but some stuff not yet, but we kind of know how it's supposed to work, right? Like we know that we're supposed to be communicating with each other beyond this language, right, Nesheba? I mean, there's something out there that that shows us that this is possible, and I guess we're just coming closer to it. And so I love that, man. I mean, that's what makes me excited, and that's what gives me the drive to keep going with this.
Exactly. And I'm going to call it a good night off that, man. And I will be seeing you in the future, man. I'm really putting in effort to try to consciously take part in this new wave of being in the now and starting things up from our perspective.
For sure.
And I will meet you in person, and I'm pretty sure if I haven't met you in my dreams yet, that'll come through.
Oh yeah, man, and then even in person, like I said, we don't always have to get all fanciful with it, but it's all just a projection from the mind, man. Who knows? And I know, that's just how it works. Like many people have come down here and jump right off the plane and be like, "What's up?" All right. Well, I'll let you two go, man. Thank you for everything, and I appreciate you letting me call in, Miss.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you sharing.
All right. Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. Sevan, thank you so much for staying over. I know we ran a little over, but that conversation wouldn't have happened if we didn't.
Yeah, I think we went through some real solutions tonight. Like this was definitely my projection for the show as far as making sure that we got through enough stuff. I didn't know how we were going to do it, though, because I didn't really have any outlines. But, I felt like today some real stuff. I may even have to go back through this one because I'll say this and just to be done with the conversation. When people get on the phone with me, the questions that they ask me, they do already know, but maybe their higher self knows it. And then what happens is that all I'm doing is I'm just a mirror, so I can, in a sense, pull that message in and then just say it. Because even tonight I was saying certain things, and I was just like, well, shoot, that is true, but I don't think we've actually thought about that yet. It's still in the queue, but so people do produce in this nucleus that we're in the answers to even the questions that I have to ask by us just getting it together and connecting, because they already do really know, like we had talked about before, the solution exists before the problems, because surely the sun or the soul comes before all of the reflections and the distortions. So that's how we're accessing this thing now, is that we got those solutions. So I want to say, thanks, I can't even put a word on it. Just thanks a ton, a bunch, a Googleplex, a Yodabyte for really, being present tonight and conducting this call, because, I felt like it was, I get on some crazy shows sometimes. So I just felt like there was such a calm moving through the audience and moving through the energy that it was really allowed me to project the message. And I look forward to definitely working with you in the future, sister, with all the stuff that we're building, all the stuff that you have going on, especially with your artists, and getting many of those artists featured into places that people that can really appreciate what they're delivering are present at. Because, we definitely need a lifestyle. And so we should all understand that spirituality can sometimes be like a subject, especially if we narrow it down really too heavy. And then the other parts of our lives, like interacting with others and learning what's really going on in some of the advanced fields of knowledge and things, start to become defunct. So we have to make sure that we're getting a fair share of that full spectrum. So that way we can go ahead and bring it all together. Then we're clear. We call that clear face. He's clear, she's clear. And then from that point, you have that mirror to reflect on all the experiences that you will have after that, which nobody can really tell you. It's all your own special workings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'd like to let everyone know that if you missed any portion of this segment and subject matters like this are so intense that sometimes you got to do a recap. So if you want, there's several different ways that you can listen to the broadcast. And you can, the playback number for archive is one of them. And you would go call into 712-432-1085. Again, that's 732-432-1085. And then you put in the participation code that you use to come on the call, which is 533-6. It's 533-869. The other way is if you go to the blog itself, ESPIRITE7.blogspot.com, there's a talk shoe player on there. And when you go onto the talk shoe player, you just pull the drop down box down, and from the drop down box, you'll be able to select which episode. So you'll select for tonight's episode. Additionally, when you're on the blog, again, ESPIRITE-radio7, period, blogspot.com, you'll see the iTunes link on there. And you can either subscribe to it or listen to it from iTunes as well. So again, the playback number for the archive is 712-432-1085. Then enter in the same participant code that you use for this call, and that is 533869, and then pound. Like I said, when you go onto the blog, it'll be available. I'll also be shooting over a copy to Sevan, and then I'm quite sure he'll post it up on his blogs and his websites as well. So there'll be a multitude of ways that you'll be able to tune in and listen if you missed any section, or like I said, as intense as the top subject matter that we covered this evening, you're definitely probably going to want to recap. So I appreciate everyone calling in. Share it with your friends. Get the word out. This is about everyone, each one, teach one, taking us to the next level, those that are just awakening to those that have already awakened and they're ready to go to the next level. It's very important that as we learn, we grow, and we grow together, because at the end of the day, we're all one.
Exactly.
We are all one. So I'm going to play us out with another. I'm going to play us out with Still by Manisha Shahani.